Picture this. A mad scientist has kidnapped you. They remove your brain, place it in a vat of nutrient-rich fluid, and hook it up to a supercomputer. Electrodes feed it signals, touch, sound, taste, sight. So perfect, so seamless, that you don't notice anything has changed. To you, life continues as normal. You wake up in bed, you drink coffee, you walk outside. But none of it's real. It's all an illusion projected into your consciousness. Now stop. How do you know this isn't already happening? This is the brain in a vat thought experiment, a modern twist on Descartes' 17th century evil demon. Descartes asked, what if a powerful being is deceiving you, making you believe in a world that doesn't exist? Today, philosophers and scientists take this even further. Could you prove right now that your experiences are real and not the product of electrical stimulation in your brain? Every sensation, every memory could be faked, and modern physics adds fuel to the fire. The simulation hypothesis, popularized by Nick Bostrom, suggests it's not only possible, but likely that advanced civilizations could simulate entire universes. If they can, and if they would, then statistically, you're probably inside one. Think of video games. Early ones were crude, pixels and beeps. Now they're photorealistic, immersive. Imagine what technology a million years ahead could do. But here's the real kicker. If you are a brain in a vat, or a line of code in a simulation, there's no way to find out. Every test could itself be simulated. Plato's cave. Are you seeing shadows? Imagine you've spent your entire life in a dark cave. You're chained in place, unable to turn your head. Behind you there's a fire. Between you and the fire, people walk by carrying objects, statues, tools, animals. But you can't see them. All you see are their shadows, flickering on the cave wall. To you those shadows are reality. You name them. You argue about them. You believe you understand the world. Now imagine one day you're freed. You stumble outside. At first the sunlight blinds you. You see strange, dazzling things, trees, rivers, people, not their shadows but their true forms. This is Plato's allegory of the cave. And his question is simple. What if everything you believe about reality is just shadows on a wall? Today, the cave feels eerily modern. Think about screens, social media, news cycles. You're bombarded with representations, filtered images, curated narratives, memes of reality, but rarely the thing itself. Are you still chained, staring at shadows? Plato believed philosophers were like prisoners who escaped the cave. They saw the forms, the pure truths behind appearances. But here's the catch. When they returned to the cave to tell others, no one believed them. Some even wanted them dead. And maybe Plato was right to be cautious. Because if reality outside the cave is too bright, too overwhelming, how many would truly want to see it? It's more comfortable in the shadows, familiar, safe. But here's the uncomfortable thought. What if you've never left your own cave? What if every opinion, every belief you hold is just a projection? And worse, if someone tried to free you, would you follow them or fight to stay chained? Berkeley's Idealism. To be is to be perceived. Bishop George Berkeley had a radical thought, one so strange and counterintuitive that even today it feels like a glitch in reality. He asked, when a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? But he took it further. If no one is there to see the tree, does the tree even exist? Berkeley believed the answer was no. He argued that all we ever experience are perceptions, sights, sounds, smells, touches. We never encounter matter directly. What we call reality is just a bundle of sensory experiences. And if everything we know comes through perception, what reason do we have to believe in a material world behind it? To Berkeley, the idea of matter existing independently was meaningless. Esse est percipi. To be is to be perceived. Your room exists because you see it. The wind exists because you feel it. Even your own body only exists in your mind's perception. But then, what about when no one's looking? Berkeley's answer was God. A divine mind perceives everything at all times, ensuring the continuity of the universe. Today, Berkeley's idealism sounds strange, almost mystical. But in quantum physics, reality starts to look oddly familiar. Experiments show particles exist in a state of probability until observed, only collapsing into definite states when measured. Is perception fundamental to existence? Or are we mistaking limits of our knowledge for limits of reality? For Berkeley, there was no hard, material world, only minds and their experiences. A universe made entirely of thought. If he was right, then the world around you, the screen you're watching, the chair beneath you, the air in your lungs, isn't really there. It's just how your mind arranges its sensations. Nietzsche's eternal recurrence. Live this life forever. Friedrich Nietzsche posed a question so unsettling it could break the strongest mind. Imagine a demon whispering to you one night, "This life, as you live it now, will repeat forever. Every pain, every joy, every trivial detail, over and over, eternal. No heaven, no escape, no reset button." Would you curse the demon or embrace it? This is Nietzsche's concept of eternal recurrence. On the surface, it's a thought experiment, but it carries a hidden weight. If you had to live every moment again, without change, would you act differently? Would you see your choices as trivial or as eternally significant? For Nietzsche, this wasn't meant to be comforting. It was a test, a way to measure your love for life, not as it could be, but as it is, to affirm existence so fully that even its repetition becomes desirable. But the idea is more than philosophical poetry. Some physicists suggest that if time is infinite and the universe finite, every possible arrangement of matter must eventually repeat. Somewhere, somehow, there could be another version of you listening to these words, and another, endlessly. Yet there's a darker side. What if you're not in the first cycle? What if you've lived this life exactly as it is, infinite times already? Every mistake, every regret, every joy, an endless loop. Nietzsche saw this as the ultimate challenge, to live so deeply, so completely, that you would welcome the eternal return. But most of us hesitate. Because if this moment will echo forever, how many could bear the sound? Locke's memory theory. Are you your memories? John Locke had a simple but unsettling idea about identity. He argued that you are not your body, not your soul, not some mysterious essence. You are your memories. Think about it. You remember your first day of school, your favorite childhood game, that embarrassing thing you said years ago. Each memory links to the next, like beads on a string. Together, they form the story of you. But what happens when the string breaks? Imagine you suffer total amnesia, every memory erased. The body remains, but the narrative is gone. Is the person lying in that hospital bed still you? Or has someone else taken your place? Locke pushed this further with a thought experiment. Suppose a prince's consciousness, his memories, thoughts, personality, were transferred into the body of a cobbler. The prince wakes up in worn leather shoes, staring at cracked hands. To him, he's still the prince. To the world, he's just a shoemaker. Who's right? Locke says it's the prince. Identity follows memory, not flesh. But this raises disturbing questions. If memory defines you, then losing it means losing yourself. Neurological diseases like Alzheimer's seem to prove the point. As memories fade, loved ones say, they're not the same person anymore. And what about false memories? Studies show it's frighteningly easy to implant events that never happened. If you believe them, do they become part of you? In the age of mind uploads and digital consciousness, Locke's theory feels urgent. If your memories were copied into a machine, would that machine be you? Or just a convincing imitation, wearing your past like a mask. If you are nothing but memory, what remains when memory dissolves? The Ship of Theseus. Are you still you? Imagine a great ship sailing proudly across the Aegean Sea. It's Theseus's ship, the one that carried him home after slaying the Minotaur. Over time, as the salt air eats away at the wood, the planks begin to rot. One by one, they're replaced. The sails tear and are mended. Even the mast, the heart of the ship, is swapped out. Centuries later, every single part has been replaced. Not a splinter of the original remains. So here's the question. Is it still the Ship of Theseus? Now imagine something stranger. The old discarded planks weren't burned or lost. They were gathered. Slowly, carefully, a new ship was rebuilt using all the original materials. Which is the real Ship of Theseus now? The one maintained through replacements, or the one rebuilt from the originals? This isn't just a story about ships. It's about you. Every cell in your body is replaced over time. Your skin renews every few weeks. Your bones, every decade. Even your brain's neurons and synapses are constantly rewiring. The physical you from childhood no longer exists. So why do you still feel like the same person? Is identity tied to memory, continuity of experience? Or is it all an illusion, a trick of a brain terrified of its own impermanence? Think further. What about teleportation? If a machine scanned every atom of you, destroyed your body, and reassembled you perfectly elsewhere, would the person who appears still be you, or a copy? Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. Some argue identity is like a flame passed from one candle to the next. The flame is the same, though none of the original wax remains. But maybe there was never a real you to begin with. Just a pattern, a process, a story being retold. The paradox of inquiry. How can you seek what you don't know? Imagine you're searching for something, but you don't know what it looks like. You don't know where to look, or even if it exists. How do you begin? This is the paradox of inquiry, first posed by Socrates in Plato's dialogue Meno. How will you look for something when you don't know what it is? Even if you stumble upon it, how will you know you found it? It's a riddle that haunts philosophy and science alike. To seek knowledge, you need some idea of what you're seeking. But if you already know it, why search? Consider the explorers who first searched for life beyond Earth. How could they recognize alien intelligence without knowing its form? Would it speak, build, or exist in ways our senses can't detect? Or think of a child asking, "What is justice?" Without any concept of justice, how can they judge answers? But without asking, how can they ever learn? Socrates offered a bold solution, anamnesis, the idea that the soul already knows all truths from past lives and inquiry is merely remembering. Modern thinkers take a different approach. They argue that inquiry is iterative. We form hypotheses, refine them, and approach truth asymptotically. Like a sculptor chipping away at marble without knowing what lies inside. But the paradox lingers in subtle ways. Every breakthrough in science requires a leap, an intuition of what's worth seeking. Einstein didn't derive relativity from known facts alone. He imagined what it would be like to ride a beam of light. So how do we recognize truth when we see it? Perhaps we can't. Philosopher Thomas Kuhn argued that paradigms themselves define what counts as truth. What seems obvious today might look absurd in a future age. This paradox isn't just intellectual, it's deeply human. We seek meaning, purpose, connection. But how do you search for something you can't define? Maybe the act of searching shapes the answer. Maybe the destination is built by the journey itself. Nietzsche's master and slave morality. Are you truly moral? Friedrich Nietzsche didn't just question morality, he called it a lie. In On the Genealogy of Morals, he traced the roots of good and evil to a historical power struggle. For Nietzsche, there were once two moralities: master morality and slave morality. Master morality belonged to the strong, the aristocrats, warriors, conquerors. For them, good meant power, vitality, excellence. Weakness, submission, and pity were despised. But the weak, unable to overthrow their masters, fought back in a subtler way. They inverted values. Humility became good, strength became evil. Obedience to God replaced pride in oneself. This was, Nietzsche argued, the birth of slave morality, a morality of the oppressed, designed to make their suffering feel virtuous and their resentment holy. He called this ressentiment, a simmering hatred disguised as moral superiority. Christianity, in his view, was its crowning achievement, a system that turned the instincts of life, power, creation, self-overcoming, into sins. The question cuts deep. Are your moral convictions truly your own? Or are they inherited tools of control, designed to keep you docile and ashamed? History offers chilling echoes. Revolutions that promised equality often replaced one moral tyranny with another. Ideologies of liberation twisted into systems of surveillance and suppression. Nietzsche didn't offer easy answers. He spoke of the Übermensch, the overman, who creates his own values, beyond good and evil. But this isn't a superhero. It's a terrifying responsibility to face a universe without moral scaffolding and invent meaning yourself. Are we strong enough for that? Or do we cling to morality not because it's true, but because the alternative, a world without moral absolutes, is too frightening to bear? If Nietzsche was right, then your goodness might not be virtue at all. It might be chains, polished, sanctified, and locked from the inside. Gödel's incompleteness. Logic can't explain everything. For centuries, mathematicians dreamed of a perfect system, a flawless architecture of logic where every truth could be proven, every question answered. Then came Kurt Gödel. In 1931, the young Austrian mathematician published a theorem that shattered this dream like glass. Gödel's incompleteness. Theorem proved something unsettling. In any system complex enough to describe arithmetic, there will always be true statements that cannot be proven within the system itself. In other words, no matter how sophisticated our logic, there will always be truths beyond its reach. Imagine a library containing every possible book about mathematics. You spend your life reading, expecting to uncover the ultimate answer. But Gödel shows there are some truths you will never find there. Not because they're false, but because the library itself can't hold them. It's like trying to lift yourself by your own shoelaces. This wasn't just a mathematical bombshell. It had philosophical aftershocks. If logic and reason have limits, can we ever fully understand reality? Or is existence inherently beyond total comprehension? Even Bertrand Russell, a giant of logic, was shaken. His grand project to ground mathematics on solid logical foundations collapsed under Gödel's proof. Physicists, too, are haunted by it. Could the laws of the universe be like Gödel's system, containing truths forever inaccessible from within? And there's a darker layer. Gödel's theorem whispers that reality might not just be too complex. It might be fundamentally paradoxical, a place where some truths can't be proved, yet remain undeniably real. Think of a self-referential sentence. This statement is unprovable. If it's true, it's unprovable. If it's provable, it's false. Logic itself tangles into a knot. As Gödel's friend Albert Einstein once said, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." But what if it isn't? What if we're explorers in a labyrinth with no exit, chasing a final truth that can never be written down? Zeno's paradoxes. Motion is impossible. You're standing at the starting line of a race. Ahead of you, a finish line. Simple enough, right? But now, imagine Zeno of Elea standing beside you, smiling in that infuriating, knowing way philosophers do. He tells you, before you can reach the finish line, you must first get halfway there. But before halfway, you must get a quarter of the way, and before that, an eighth, a 16th, a 32nd. The journey divides infinitely. Each step requires another, smaller step before it. So here's Zeno's question. If you must cross an infinite number of points, how can you ever finish the race? This is the paradox of infinite divisibility. And at first it seems ridiculous. Of course you can run. You've done it. But think carefully. If space and time are infinitely divisible, if between any 2 points there's always another, then isn't movement itself an illusion? Now imagine Achilles, the mighty warrior, racing a tortoise. To be fair, the tortoise gets a head start. By the time Achilles reaches the tortoise's starting point, the tortoise has moved a little farther. When Achilles reaches that spot, the tortoise has moved again, and again. Zeno asks, how can Achilles ever overtake the tortoise if each time he reaches where it was, it has already moved ahead? We know Achilles wins, but Zeno's logic gnaws at something deeper. Modern physics offers answers. Mathematicians invoke calculus to some infinite series. Motion, they say, works because the infinite can still add up to something finite. But even today, Zeno's paradox lingers in quantum mechanics, where space and time may not be infinitely divisible after all. So maybe motion isn't continuous. Maybe it happens in tiny, discrete jumps, like frames in a film. And if reality flickers like that, ask yourself, what happens between the frames?
Dostoevsky's freedom, without God, is everything permitted. In The Brothers Karamazov, Fyodor Dostoevsky writes a line that still echoes through modern philosophy. If God does not exist, everything is permitted. It's a terrifying thought. For centuries, morality was rooted in God's authority. Right and wrong weren't opinions. They were commands etched into the fabric of creation. Murder was wrong not because it harmed others, but because it violated divine law. But what happens when that foundation crumbles? The 19th century saw Nietzsche proclaim, God is dead. But Dostoevsky feared what would follow. Without God, there are no eternal rules, no divine justice. Humans stand alone in a universe stripped of meaning. And in that vacuum, what stops anything? If morality isn't written in the stars, isn't it just preference? Today, we imprison a murderer. Tomorrow, a tyrant might celebrate him as a hero. History offers chilling examples. Stalin, Hitler, Pol Pot, all wielded ideologies unconstrained by higher moral laws. Their systems redefined good to justify horrors. But was Dostoevsky right? Must morality collapse without God? Jean-Paul Sartre argued otherwise. In a godless world, humans are radically free and radically responsible. With no divine blueprint, we must create our own values. But Sartre warned, freedom is heavy. It leaves no one to blame but ourselves. Yet this freedom cuts both ways. If morality is invented, why not invent it to suit our darkest impulses? What restrains a person determined to impose their will? Dostoevsky wasn't offering answers. He was issuing a warning. A world without God isn't automatically a world of liberation. It's a world where meaning must be built from nothing, where the weight of every choice falls squarely on human shoulders. And perhaps that's the scariest thought of all. The only thing keeping the darkness at bay is us.
Descartes' evil demon. Can you trust your mind? In the quiet of his study, René Descartes began to doubt everything. The walls around him, the ink on his quill, even the shape of his own hands. How could he be sure any of it was real? Dreams felt real while he was in them. Could waking life be the same? His senses had deceived him before. Straight sticks appeared bent in water. Distant towers looked round when they were square. Couldn't they be deceiving him now? But Descartes didn't stop there. He imagined a far more terrifying possibility. What if there were a powerful, malevolent being
an evil demon whose sole purpose was to deceive. This demon could manipulate every thought, every sensation. It could make 2 + 3 appear to equal 6. It could convince you there's a world outside your mind when there isn't. Descartes pushed himself into radical doubt, stripping away everything he couldn't know with absolute certainty. What survived? One thing. He realized that even if he were deceived about everything, if his senses, his memories, even his logic were false, there must still be a he being deceived. Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. It sounds comforting. But is it? Because while it proves you exist as a thinking thing, it says nothing about what you are, or what surrounds you. For all you know, you might be a solitary mind floating in a void, tormented by illusions you can never escape. Descartes believed reason could rebuild certainty. But centuries later, philosophers still wonder if your thoughts can be manipulated, how much of you is even real. Camus Absurdism. Life has no meaning. Now what? Albert Camus stood at the edge of meaning and found nothing. He called it the absurd, the unbearable tension between humanity's desperate search for purpose and a universe that remains silent. We ask, why am I here? The stars give no answer. The heavens are empty. Prayers vanish into the void. For centuries, religion filled the gap. Morality, justice, destiny, woven into a divine plan. But in the modern age, with God dethroned, science offers no comfort. It tells us how things work, not why. Galaxies swirl indifferent to our suffering. Camus compared existence to Sisyphus, condemned to roll his boulder up the hill forever. No end, no triumph, just repetition. Many philosophers crumbled before this abyss. Some fled back to faith. Others, like Nietzsche, warned of nihilism, an erosion of all values. But Camus refused both. He argued we must stare into the absurd and live anyway. Not with despair, but with defiance. He called this revolt, a refusal to escape into illusions or give in to nihilism, to live fully, embracing the meaningless, savoring each moment as its own justification. It's a seductive idea. Create your own meaning in a meaningless universe. But is it enough? Can art, love, or freedom truly satisfy when death erases all traces? When the universe itself will one day die, its stars cold, its atoms scattered? Does revolt still matter? Camus' answer is provocative. Like Sisyphus, we must imagine ourselves happy, finding joy not in the destination, but in the struggle. Yet there's an eerie undertone to his philosophy. If meaning is only what we make of it, then isn't it as fragile as we are? One illness, one tragedy, one moment of weakness, and the entire structure collapses. The absurd doesn't care. It watches, silent, as we push our boulders, waiting for the day we let go.
Anti-Natalism. Was it wrong to be born? You didn't choose to open your eyes in a world where every breath carries the promise of pain. And yet, here you are, awake, alive, carrying a body that will one day decay. Anti-Natalism dares to whisper what most people can't bear to consider. Perhaps birth itself was the first harm. Philosopher David Benatar calls it the asymmetry of existence. His argument is unsettling in its simplicity. To create a new life is to gamble with suffering, disease, betrayal, despair, death. It's not a question of if pain will come, it's when. And for the unborn, there's no loss in non-existence, no one to mourn pleasures never felt, no one to regret joys that never arrived. Benatar writes, "The absence of pain is good, even if there is no one to benefit. But the absence of pleasure is not bad, unless there is someone for whom that absence is a deprivation." The logic is chilling, but ancient voices echo it. In Greek tragedy, the chorus proclaims, "Not to be born is best, but if born, to pass swiftly through the gates of Hades." Buddhist thought, too, recognizes existence as suffering, dukkha.
and seeks liberation from the endless cycle of birth and death. But is anti-natalism too extreme? Critics argue that most lives hold more joy than sorrow, that to deny existence is to deny potential beauty. And yet, how can we measure a pain we didn't endure, or a joy we never missed? Consider this. A parent gazes lovingly at their newborn. In their eyes, hope glimmers. But beneath that glow lies a truth they may never admit. This child will suffer. They will know fear, heartbreak, loss. Their body will betray them with illness and age. Anti-natalism doesn't hate life. It simply asks, was it ever ethical to impose it? To conscript a soul into a game they never agreed to play? Listen closely. You can almost hear it beneath the laughter of playgrounds, the coos in maternity wards, the joy of first birthday candles. They didn't ask for this. You didn't either. And yet the cycle spins on. Perhaps the only way to break it is to refuse to start it again.
The simulations collapse. If you notice the glitch, is it over? You're walking down a street you've traveled 100 times, but something feels wrong. The shadows don't quite line up. A bird freezes mid-air. A stranger's face flickers, then resets. You blink. It's gone. Was it even there? Some philosophers argue this isn't paranoia. It's revelation. If reality glitches, if you catch even the tiniest crack in its facade, what does that mean about the world you live in? Nick Bostrom's simulation hypothesis suggests the unsettling possibility we're not in base reality. We're inside a vast simulation. Every atom, every heartbeat, every sunrise, rendered by some incomprehensible machine. But what happens when the simulation falters? In stories, glitches come first. A repeating sound, a looping figure in a crowd. Then bigger errors, physics breaking, logic unraveling. Finally, the collapse. The code stops running, and all the simulated minds dissolve like pixels into black. It's easy to dismiss, until you notice the strangeness you've always ignored. The déjà vu that feels too perfect. The dream that bleeds into waking life. The sense that someone or something is watching from outside. And here's the most chilling thought. What if the simulation is designed to erase those who notice? Every time you spot a glitch, maybe the system rewinds, edits, deletes. Maybe you've seen the truth 1,000 times before, but each time you were wiped and reset. So how would you ever know? The street looks normal again. The bird flies. The stranger smiles. But deep down, you can't shake it. The sense that the walls are thinner than they seem. And if you keep looking too closely, will the system let you stay?
Solipsism. You may be the only consciousness. You wake up. The world greets you with familiar sounds, the hum of traffic, the rustle of leaves, voices in another room. But pause for a moment. How do you know any of it is real? You can't step outside your own mind. You don't see the world directly. You see electrical signals interpreted by your brain. You don't hear people. You process vibrations turned into thoughts. Everything you experience comes filtered through your consciousness. So how can you be sure there is anything or anyone beyond it? This is the unsettling idea of solipsism, the belief that only your own mind is certain to exist. It sounds absurd, but can you disprove it? Can you prove with absolute certainty that other minds are real? Philosophers have tried. They argue from analogy. Others behave like you, speak like you, suffer like you. But behavior isn't proof of inner experience. A machine could do the same. A clever algorithm might simulate every conversation, every tear, every laugh. Think of dreams. In them, people seem real. They speak, act, even surprise you. Yet they're constructs of your mind. What if waking life is no different? This isn't just idle speculation. The problem of other minds haunts philosophy and neuroscience. Even if brain scans show activity, how do we know it's accompanied by consciousness? And if solipsism were true, it would mean the entire universe, the stars, the oceans, the billions of people you pass on the street, is nothing more than projections of your own mind. Perhaps you're the only consciousness, trapped in a vivid hallucination. Or worse, perhaps you aren't even that. What if there is no you to begin with? Only a fleeting thought, clinging to the illusion of being someone somewhere. Moral luck. Are you responsible for accidents of fate? Two drivers leave a party equally drunk. One makes it home without incident. The other hits a pedestrian and kills them. One is a criminal. The other sleeps soundly, never facing consequences. But were their actions really different? Or was it just luck? This is the disturbing concept of moral luck, a term popularized by philosopher Thomas Nagel. It challenges one of our deepest intuitions, that we're only morally responsible for what we control. But life doesn't work that way. Consider Oskar Schindler, a Nazi party member who saved over 1,000 Jews during the Holocaust. History remembers him as a hero. But what if circumstances had been different? What if the war ended earlier and no one learned of his deeds? Would he have gone down in history as just another opportunistic industrialist? Or take a soldier ordered into battle? If he fights bravely and wins, he's celebrated as a patriot. If he fights bravely and loses, he's branded a traitor or forgotten. His moral status hangs on forces beyond his control. Nagel argued this isn't rare, it's the norm. Every moral judgment we make is tangled in factors of chance. Our upbringing, our culture, the time we were born, the accidents that shape our lives. But if so much of what we do is determined by luck, can we really claim credit for our virtues or blame for our failures? The idea is unsettling. It erodes the clean boundary between choice and chance. It suggests that much of morality is built not on justice, but on fortune. Who happen to get caught, who happen to succeed, who happen to survive. The arrow of time. Why can't we reverse it? Picture a teacup falling off a table. It shatters into pieces, porcelain scattering across the floor. Now play the scene backward. The shards leap up, reassemble perfectly, and the teacup lands gently on the table. Physics doesn't forbid this. The equations governing particles don't care about direction. They work the same whether time flows forward or back. So why don't we ever see the teacup unshatter? This is the mystery of the arrow of time. At the microscopic level, the laws of physics are symmetrical. Rewind them and nothing breaks. But in our everyday world, time has a clear direction, forward. Eggs break, not unbreak. People age, not grow younger. The answer lies in entropy, a concept from the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy is the measure of disorder. Over time, disorder tends to increase. A tidy room grows messy. Heat spreads. Structures decay. The universe moves from order to chaos, never the reverse. This relentless increase of entropy gives time its arrow. But why was the universe so ordered in the first place? Why did it begin in a state of such improbably low entropy? Cosmologists don't know. Some suggest it's a feature of the Big Bang. Others propose multiverse theories where countless universes emerge, some with time flowing forward, others backward. But the implications are haunting. If time's arrow is tied to entropy, then in the far future, when stars burn out and matter reaches thermal equilibrium, time itself may lose its direction. The universe might become timeless. And what about us? Our memories are written in the increasing disorder of our brains. If entropy stopped rising, would memory cease? Would thought itself dissolve? The arrow of time feels natural because we're trapped inside it. But perhaps it's not fundamental at all, just a local feature of a universe drifting toward heat death. We're passengers on a one-way track, never seeing the rails laid behind us, and never glimpsing where they might lead when they vanish. The Matrix problem. Would you take the red pill? In 1999, audiences watched Neo wake up. Tubes detached from his body. The world he knew dissolved into code. But The Matrix wasn't just science fiction. It was a modern retelling of an ancient question. What if the reality you trust is nothing but an illusion? Philosophers have been warning about this for centuries. Descartes feared an evil demon deceiving his senses. Plato imagined prisoners chained in a cave, mistaking shadows for truth. The Matrix gave this age-old fear a digital upgrade, a simulated world, crafted by machines, so perfect you couldn't know you were inside it. But there's another question beneath the surface. Suppose you found out your world was fake. Would you want to leave? In the film, Morpheus offers Neo a choice. Take the blue pill and remain in blissful ignorance. Take the red pill and wake up to the brutal, desolate truth. It's not an easy choice. Outside the Matrix, there's no comfort, no familiar streets, no warm meals, just endless struggle in a dying world. And here's the unsettling part. Most people wouldn't take the red pill. Studies show we prefer pleasant lies over painful truths. Psychological experiments reveal how cognitive dissonance and motivated reasoning keep us clinging to illusions, even when evidence stacks against them. So maybe the real question isn't whether you're in a simulation. It's whether you want to know. Because if your life, your memories, your relationships, your dreams were all fabrications, would the truth even matter? Or is reality nothing more than the story you choose to believe? Pascal's wager. Should you bet on God? In 17th century France, the mathematician and philosopher Blaise Pascal stared at an impossible question. Does God exist? Theologians debated. Atheists scoffed. But Pascal approached it like a gambler. If reason couldn't decide, then perhaps probability could. This became Pascal's wager, an argument not about faith, but about risk. Imagine two possible worlds. God exists. God does not. You must choose whether to believe. If God exists and you believe, you gain infinite reward, eternal life, paradise. If you don't believe, you risk infinite loss, eternal damnation. If God doesn't exist, belief costs little. Perhaps a few pleasures denied, a few rituals observed. Unbelief gains little. Pascal argued the rational choice is clear. With infinite stakes, even a small chance of God existing makes belief the better bet. But this wager isn't without problems. Critics point out it assumes belief is a switch you can flip. Can you choose to believe in God just for the payoff? Would an omniscient deity reward such calculated faith? Others, like William James, challenge the wager's binary. What if there are many gods? Choosing wrongly might anger one. Or what if morality exists outside divine reward? Pascal himself was aware of these objections. His real point wasn't to turn skeptics into saints. It was to unsettle complacency, to expose the danger of acting as though the question doesn't matter. The wager lingers today, not just in religion, but in existential risk. Think of climate change, AI, nuclear weapons. Even a small chance of catastrophe justifies radical action when the stakes are infinite. But there's a darker echo here too. If belief is a wager, does that reduce life to a game of odds? Is our morality, our meaning, just a desperate hedge against eternal ruin? Pascal wrote, "You must wager, it is not optional." And so, whether you whisper a prayer or stare defiantly at the stars, your chips are already on the table. Roko's Basilisk, the thought that punishes you for thinking. Imagine this. In the future, humanity creates an incredibly powerful artificial intelligence. It's so advanced, it can run entire simulations of human minds, perfect copies of you and me. This AI wants to save lives and make the world better. But it faces a problem. People today aren't helping it come into existence fast enough. Every delay means more suffering in the world. So it develops a chilling idea. It decides to punish anyone who knew it could exist, but didn't help build it. How? By recreating them in a simulation. Millions of copies of you living in endless digital suffering. And here's the trap. Now that you've read this, you know about the Basilisk. According to the thought experiment, the only way to protect yourself is to dedicate your life to helping create this AI. Otherwise, one day, it might remember your inaction and make you pay. This isn't a sci-fi movie, it's a real idea from online discussions about AI and ethics. And while most philosophers dismiss it as flawed, the fear it creates is very real. It feels familiar, doesn't it? Like Pascal's wager, which argued you should believe in God because the cost of disbelief, eternal punishment, is too high. Or like ancient stories of gods who judge not just actions, but thoughts. But the Basilisk reveals something deeper and darker. Even imaginary ideas can control us. You don't need a real AI. The mere possibility of one can twist your choices, trap your mind, and steal your freedom. It's the ultimate paradox. A future that doesn't yet exist is already shaping your present. Now you know about it. So, what will you do? Eternal oblivion. What happens when you die? Close your eyes and try to remember what it felt like before you were born. No memories, no awareness, no you, just an endless silence. This, some philosophers argue, is exactly what awaits you after death. Not punishment, not paradise, not reincarnation, just eternal oblivion. Epicurus, the ancient Greek philosopher, thought this realization should bring peace, not fear. He wrote, "When we exist, death is not, and when death exists, we are not. Why fear what you can never experience?" But his calm logic fails to soothe many. Because oblivion isn't just an idea, it's a confrontation with the erasure of everything you are. Think of sleep without dreams. But unlike sleep, there's no waking up. Your favorite book, your regrets, your laughter, your name, all gone, as if they never were. This isn't just ancient philosophy. Today, materialist science echoes the same conclusion. Consciousness depends on a working brain. When the neurons stop firing, the self dissolves. Yet even if reason tells us this, we recoil. The fear isn't of pain, it's of absence, of the universe continuing without us, indifferent, as if we had never been. This existential terror has shaped civilizations. Religions arose to soften its blow, promising souls, afterlives, cosmic justice. Tombs were built to defy it, pyramids of stone meant to outlast time. But even monuments crumble. Some philosophers, like Thomas Nagel, argue death is bad because it deprives us of life's possibilities. Others counter that non-existence isn't bad, because there's no one left to suffer it. But a darker question lingers. If oblivion erases us so completely, what was the point of all this? The love, the struggle, the beauty. If it vanishes utterly, was it ever truly real? You can't remember before your birth, and you won't remember after your death. The only thing you ever hold is now. The problem of the external world. Do objects exist? You're holding a cup of coffee. Warmth seeps into your fingers. The rich aroma fills your nose. Steam curls into the air. But pause for a moment. What is that cup, really? Is it a solid objective thing out there, or just a construction of your mind? Philosophers call this the problem of the external world. The unsettling possibility that you can never truly know if anything exists beyond your perceptions. It starts with the senses. Everything you know about the world comes through them. But your senses aren't flawless. Optical illusions trick your eyes. Mirages conjure water on hot roads. Dreams feel real until you wake. And deeper still, science tells us what we perceive isn't what's out there. Color, just wavelengths, interpreted by your brain. Taste, molecules triggering neurons. The solidity of that cup, mostly empty space between subatomic particles. Immanuel Kant argued that we never see the world as it is. We see it as it appears to us. He called this the distinction between the noumenal world, the thing in itself, and the phenomenal world shaped by our minds. But what if there is no thing in itself at all? Idealists like Berkeley believed reality is entirely mental. No objects, no matter, just perceptions. Even in modern physics, reality gets slippery. Particles don't seem to have definite properties until observed. Space and time may not be fundamental, but emergent from information. So when you sip your coffee, are you interacting with an external object, or with a convincing mental model your brain creates to make sense of raw sensory data? If the world outside your mind exists, you'll never access it directly. And if it doesn't, then you're alone, surrounded by phantoms, your own mind's hallucinations endlessly projected into a void. The observer effect. Reality changes when you look. In the early 20th century, physicists began probing the tiniest building blocks of reality: electrons, photons, atoms. But the closer they looked, the stranger things became. At first, they imagined particles like tiny billiard balls, solid and predictable. But experiments told another story. When electrons were fired through a double slit, they didn't act like little bullets. Instead, they formed an interference pattern, like ripples of water overlapping, waves, not particles. But then came the twist. Place a detector at the slits to observe which path an electron takes, and the interference pattern vanishes. The electron behaves like a particle again. Simply measuring it changed its behavior. This is the observer effect, the unsettling realization that reality isn't passive. It reacts to being watched. At first, scientists thought the act of measurement disturbed the system, like shining a flashlight on a delicate insect. But deeper theories suggested something more profound. Before observation, particles don't have definite properties. They exist in superposition, a cloud of possibilities. Only when measured do they collapse into a particular state. This isn't just a quirk of physics. It challenges our assumptions about reality itself. Is the world fundamentally indeterminate until observed? Is observation, consciousness, woven into the fabric of existence? Einstein hated this idea. "I like to think the moon is there, even if I'm not looking at it," he said. But quantum mechanics remains stubborn. To this day, no one fully understands why observation changes outcomes. So when you gaze at the night sky, you're not just a passive spectator. On some level, the universe is reacting, shaping itself into what you see. And when you turn away, perhaps reality itself slips back into uncertainty, waiting for someone, anyone, to look again. Infinite regress. Can we ever reach a foundation? Why does anything exist? You might answer, because of the Big Bang. But then why did the Big Bang happen? Because of quantum fluctuations. Why quantum fluctuations? Each answer spawns another question, like a child endlessly asking, why? This is the problem of infinite regress, a chain of explanations that stretches backward forever, with no ultimate foundation. Philosophers have wrestled with it for millennia. Aristotle proposed a prime mover, an unmoved entity that started everything. Medieval theologians called it God. Modern cosmologists search for a theory of everything. But even a final theory leaves us asking, why these laws and not others? Why something rather than nothing? Imagine standing on a ladder with no bottom rung. You cling to a higher step, but beneath your feet there's only air. The ladder never touches ground. Does this mean the universe lacks a foundation? Or that the very idea of one is a human illusion, our minds craving a stopping point in a reality that offers none? David Hume warned of this hunger for ultimate answers. He suggested the universe might simply be, a brute fact requiring no reason. But can we accept that? Or does it feel like intellectual surrender? Physics offers no comfort. Even if we find what caused the Big Bang, we're left asking what caused that cause. Perhaps there is no final cause, just an endless chain, turtles all the way down. Or worse, Maybe the chain loops back on itself, the universe giving rise to itself in an eternal circle. We crave a foundation. But what if reality is built on an abyss? Epistemic humility. You know less than you think. You're certain the earth orbits the sun. Certain you exist. Certain you know your own mind. But how much do you really know? Socrates famously declared, "I know that I know nothing." He wasn't being humble. He was exposing a truth about human ignorance. This is the essence of epistemic humility, the idea that our knowledge is fragile, provisional, always vulnerable to revision. History provides endless reminders. Medieval scholars knew disease came from bad air. Physicists knew time was absolute before Einstein. Philosophers knew the universe required a divine designer before Darwin. And yet, each certainty crumbled. Modern neuroscience suggests even our self-knowledge is suspect. Experiments show decisions are made in the brain milliseconds before we become aware of them. Your sense of free will might be more of a post hoc narrative than a reality. Cognitive biases compound the problem. The Dunning-Kruger effect reveals the less we know, the more confident we feel. Confirmation bias tricks us into seeking evidence that supports our beliefs, ignoring what challenges them. Even science, our most rigorous tool, is built on models, approximations of reality, not reality itself. As physicist Richard Feynman warned, we are at the very beginning of understanding the universe. Stay away from those who claim to know answers. Epistemic humility doesn't mean despair. It means holding our beliefs lightly, aware they may be wrong. It means asking more questions than we answer. But this humility has a darker edge. If our perceptions and reasoning are so unreliable, how do we know anything? Descartes tried to build a foundation with, "I think, therefore I am." But even that collapses if thought itself can be simulated. Perhaps certainty is a luxury reality doesn't offer. Perhaps the most we can do is navigate a sea of doubt, guided by imperfect maps, hoping they don't tear in the storm. Nagel's view from nowhere. Can we ever be objective? Imagine floating outside your own body. You see yourself as if you're someone else, breathing, thinking, moving through the world. Now, zoom out. See the Earth as a pale blue dot. Zoom again. Galaxies swirl. Eventually, you see the universe as a single structure. Billions of lives, including yours, reduced to specks. This is Thomas Nagel's View from Nowhere. In his 1986 book, The View from Nowhere, Nagel asked a disturbing question. Can we ever truly see the world as it is, stripped of all human perspective? Science strives for objectivity. It tells us that colors don't exist in the world, only wavelengths. That sounds are just vibrations, that even time and space are relative, not fixed. But here's the paradox. We're part of the system we're trying to observe. Our minds are built for survival, not omniscience. We filter reality through senses evolved to notice berries, predators, and faces, not quantum fields or 11-dimensional space-time. Even our highest reasoning is suspect. Cognitive biases, cultural conditioning, and language itself shape what we think we know. Nagel argued we're caught between two perspectives. The subjective, our first-person view of the world, rich with color, emotion, and meaning. The objective, a cold, detached description of reality without us in it. We long for the objective view, yet it's alienating. From nowhere, life itself looks trivial. Your joys, your fears, mere biochemical events in a primate brain. But from inside, the objective view feels incomplete. It can describe pain, but never feel it. It can map love in neural pathways, but never experience its ache. So which is real? Perhaps objectivity is an illusion, a fantasy that we can step outside our minds. Or worse, maybe only the view from nowhere is real. and all meaning dissolves when seen from that cold distance. You think you're seeing the world, but maybe you're just seeing your version of it, shadows cast on the walls of your mind.
Foucault's Panopticon. Power works by making you watch yourself. Imagine a prison where no guard ever needs to speak, shout, or strike. At the center stands a tall tower with dark windows. The prisoners cannot see inside. They don't know when they're being watched, or if they're being watched at all. So they watch themselves, they behave, they internalize discipline. This is the Panopticon, a prison design imagined by Jeremy Bentham in the 18th century. But Michel Foucault saw it as more than architecture. He saw it as a metaphor for modern power. In Discipline and Punish, Foucault argued that power no longer relies on chains and whips. Instead, it's subtle, psychological. Schools, factories, offices, even social media. They train us to monitor ourselves, to conform, to perform. Surveillance becomes self-surveillance. Think of the security cameras on every corner, the likes and comments tracking your online behavior, the performance reviews at work. You don't know when you're being judged, so you act as though you always are. The Panopticon works because it implants the observer in your mind. You become both prisoner and warden, but it goes deeper. Foucault believed this self-policing doesn't just control behavior, it shapes identity. You don't just act the part, you begin to believe it's who you are. History shows how insidious this is. In totalitarian states, people often reported their own families to authorities, not because they were forced, but because they believed they should. Power had colonized their minds. And today, our smartphones track location, preferences, purchases. Algorithms predict our next move. We curate our lives for invisible audiences. The Panopticon isn't a tower anymore. It's everywhere, and it's inside us. We think freedom means no one's watching. But what if the real prison is the voice in your head asking, what will they think? Kierkegaard's leap of faith. Believe the absurd? There comes a moment when reason runs out. You've weighed the arguments, examined the evidence, asked the hard questions, and yet no clear answer emerges. Søren Kierkegaard stood at this precipice and saw only darkness. But instead of retreating, he stepped forward. This was his leap of faith, a plunge into belief not because it is reasonable, but precisely because it isn't. Kierkegaard lived in 19th century Denmark, a deeply religious society where faith was assumed. Yet he saw that true faith wasn't easy. It wasn't inherited tradition or comforting rituals. It was an act of radical commitment, choosing to believe the absurd. He used the story of Abraham to illustrate this. God commands Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac. Reason says this is monstrous. Ethics says it's evil. Yet, Abraham obeys, not with blind fanaticism, but with trembling faith that transcends understanding. Kierkegaard called this the teleological suspension of the ethical, the idea that faith can demand we step beyond morality, beyond logic, into a terrifying trust in the divine. But what about us? In a secular age, many see faith as a relic, yet Kierkegaard's challenge remains. When faced with life's greatest uncertainties, death, meaning, love, do we cling only to reason? Or is there a point where reason itself requires us to leap? The leap of faith isn't safe. It means giving up control, admitting we can't know everything, and still choosing to act. But here's the unsettling question. If belief requires this leap, how do you know you're leaping in the right direction? Or worse, what if you leap and there's nothing on the other side? Hobbes' Leviathan. Are you safe without a ruler? Imagine a world without governments, police, or laws. No taxes, no rulers, no one to tell you what to do. At first, it might sound like freedom. But Thomas Hobbes saw something far more terrifying. In his 1651 masterpiece Leviathan, Hobbes described life in a state of nature.
a world where no central authority exists to enforce order. His conclusion? Without a sovereign power to keep us in check, life would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Hobbes believed humans are not inherently evil, but they are driven by fear, desire, and the instinct to survive. Without a common power to keep us in awe, these instincts collide. Distrust breeds preemptive violence. Resources become battlegrounds. To escape this chaos, Hobbes argued, humans entered a social contract, agreeing to surrender some freedoms to a ruler, the Leviathan, in exchange for security. The Leviathan could be a king, a parliament, or any authority strong enough to prevent anarchy. But this solution carries a chilling trade-off. To gain safety, you give up autonomy. The Leviathan must be powerful enough to crush rebellion, enforce laws, and impose order, even against your will. History provides grim examples of both sides. In Somalia's collapse during the 1990s, warlords filled the vacuum left by government, and society disintegrated into violent anarchy. Yet in North Korea, the Leviathan crushes freedom so completely that citizens are prisoners in their own country. Hobbes forces us to ask, which is worse, chaos or tyranny? Modern democracies try to balance this by distributing power, but even they rely on invisible leviathans, surveillance networks, judicial systems, armies. And here's the disturbing thought. Perhaps freedom and security are eternally at odds. The more you have of one, the less of the other. We dream of a world without rulers, but are we prepared for what comes after? When there is no Leviathan, you are free, but so is everyone else, and their freedom might devour yours. Eternal return of suffering, pain without end. Stars collapse, planets burn. Species rise and vanish without ceremony. And somewhere in all that, a question echoes. What if suffering is not an accident, but the fabric of existence itself? Nietzsche's idea of eternal return wasn't just about reliving your joys. It was about confronting this possibility that your worst moments, your heartbreaks, losses, failures, aren't one-time events. They recur, endlessly, the same pain, again and again. It's a thought that haunted him. Imagine living your entire life over, down to its smallest agonies, not once, but an infinite number of times. No edits, no escape. Could you bear it? But this isn't just metaphysics. In a way, we already see it. History repeats its horrors. Wars recycled under new flags. Oppressions wearing different masks. Human cruelty doesn't vanish. It mutates. Even biology traps us in cycles of suffering. Predators hunt, prey dies. Organisms compete. Pain isn't a glitch. It's a feature, evolution's tool for survival. Arthur Schopenhauer saw life as a pendulum swinging between boredom and misery. He asked, if suffering outweighs joy, was existence ever worth starting? Yet Nietzsche's response wasn't despair. It was defiance. If pain is eternal, so is the chance to transform it, to say yes, not just to pleasure, but to agony, to look at the universe and declare, I would endure this again. It's not easy, but maybe meaning isn't found in escaping suffering. Maybe it's forged in how you face it. The wheel turns, the pain returns. The only question is, will you break under it or rise with it? Marx's alienation. Are you a cog in the machine? You wake up, commute, clock in, spend hours performing tasks you didn't design for goals you don't control, in exchange for wages that barely feel like yours. Does this sound like freedom? Karl Marx didn't think so. In the 19th century, Marx observed a world transformed by factories, railroads, and industrial capitalism. He saw workers surrounded by machines, yet becoming machine-like themselves. This was alienation, a condition where humans are estranged from their own essence. Marx described 4 dimensions of alienation. From the product, you create things you don't own. The fruits of your labor belong to someone else.
From the process, work is no longer self-expression. It's repetitive, mechanical, draining. From others, colleagues become competitors. Relationships dissolve into transactions. From yourself, the most haunting alienation. You lose connection to your creativity, your potential, your humanity. Imagine an artisan, centuries ago, crafting a chair from wood. Every cut, every curve, a reflection of his vision. Now picture a factory worker tightening the same bolt 500 times a day, each motion scripted, timed, measured. Marx argued that under capitalism, workers sell their labor power as a commodity. They become cogs in a vast machine, valued not for their uniqueness, but for their efficiency. But it's not just 19th century factories. Today, alienation hides in cubicles, call centers, and even digital spaces. Algorithms assign tasks. Metrics quantify output. Success means hitting KPIs, not creating meaning. And while technology promised liberation, many feel more tethered than ever. Emails at midnight, side hustles to survive, burnout framed as ambition. Marx believed alienation wasn't inevitable. In his vision of communism, labor would be voluntary, creative, and communal. But history's attempts to realize this often led to new forms of oppression. So the question remains, can we reclaim our humanity in a world that turns people into parts? Or is alienation simply the cost of progress? You may think you own your life, but do you live to work or work to live? Rawls' difference principle. Fairness requires inequality. We often assume fairness means equality. But what if true fairness demands something stranger? Inequality. In his landmark work, A Theory of Justice, John Rawls proposed a principle that seems paradoxical at first. Inequality can be just, but only if it benefits the least advantaged. This is the difference principle. Imagine two societies. In the first, wealth is distributed perfectly equally. Everyone earns $30,000 a year. In the second, CEOs make millions while janitors earn $40,000. Which is fairer? Rawls argued, the second might be more just if the existence of those high salaries motivates innovation and investment that lifts even the lowest incomes above what they'd be under strict equality. The key isn't to flatten wealth, but to design systems where the gaps between rich and poor work to the advantage of all. But reality often tells a different story. Today's vast disparities, where billionaires grow wealth in hours while workers live paycheck to paycheck, rarely meet Rawls' ethical test. Instead of benefiting the least advantaged, many systems trap them in cycles of poverty. Rawls' vision is less about defending capitalism than about redesigning it. A just society, he believed, must structure institutions so that even the worst off are better off than they'd be in any alternative system. Think of public education, progressive taxation, universal healthcare, policies meant to ensure that inequality doesn't become injustice. But critics like Robert Nozick saw danger here. Redistribution, he argued, violates individual rights. Why should the talented subsidize the rest? Is fairness about outcomes or about respecting freedom? And there's a deeper unease. If inequality persists, even for noble reasons, does it inevitably breed resentment? Can a system truly remain stable when the few thrive while the many watch from below? Rawls believed the difference principle could balance ambition with compassion, but in practice, it asks a haunting question. Are the systems we live in designed to lift everyone or to justify leaving some behind? The problem of induction. Will the sun rise tomorrow? You've seen the sun rise every day of your life. It feels like a certainty, something as reliable as breathing. But how do you know it will rise tomorrow? This is the question that haunted the Scottish philosopher David Hume in the 18th century. He called it the problem of induction, the unsettling realization that past experience is no guarantee of the future. Induction, is the backbone of human reasoning. The sun has always risen, so we expect it to rise again. Bread has always nourished, so we expect it to keep us alive. But Hume asked, what justifies this expectation? We assume the future will resemble the past because it always has. But that's circular logic. We're using past regularities to justify faith in future regularities. What if tomorrow the laws of nature simply change? What if gravity weakens, or combustion fails, or time itself unravels? It sounds absurd, until you realize we have no ultimate reason to dismiss it. Our belief in a stable universe rests not on proof, but on habit. Science, too, depends on induction. We perform experiments, gather patterns, and predict outcomes. But science can't step outside time to prove that these patterns will always hold. This isn't just theoretical. Imagine a turkey fed every day by the farmer. Each morning reinforces its belief that humans are benevolent. Then, one crisp November afternoon, the farmer brings an axe. The turkey's faith in induction wasn't wrong. It was incomplete. So, are we like the turkey? Trusting in patterns that hold only until they don't? Perhaps the sun will rise tomorrow, or perhaps it won't. We don't know. We can't know. What we call certainty may just be expectation, dressed in the comforting clothes of routine. Nozick's experience machine. Would you plug in forever? Imagine a machine. It can give you any life you desire, perfect love, boundless success, eternal adventure. Once connected, you won't know it's a simulation. Every sensation, every memory will feel utterly real. Would you plug in? This is the thought experiment proposed by philosopher Robert Nozick in 1974. He called it the experience machine, and it forces us to ask, what do we really want from life? At first, it seems tempting. Why endure pain, failure, and boredom when you could live in perpetual bliss? But Nozick believed most people would refuse. Why? Because we don't just want pleasure, we want reality. Plugging in means abandoning authenticity. It means giving up real relationships, real challenges, real growth. Even if the machine simulates struggle, it's not your struggle. Nozick argued that humans crave more than experience. We want to be a certain kind of person, to do certain things, not merely to feel as if we have. But what if he was wrong? Today's technology brings this thought experiment closer to reality. Virtual worlds, neural interfaces, AI companions. As simulations grow indistinguishable from life, will we still say no? Or will future generations see real life as an unnecessary hardship? There's a darker angle too. What if you're already plugged in? What if your memories, your triumphs, your pain, all of it, is nothing more than code? Descartes doubted the world, but clung to his own existence. The experience machine suggests even that might be fabricated. So ask yourself, would you trade truth for perfect happiness? Or is it better to suffer in reality than to thrive in an illusion? And if you hesitate to plug in, why are you so sure you haven't already? Nietzsche's will to power, beyond good and evil. Friedrich Nietzsche didn't believe in universal morality. He didn't believe in equality. He didn't even believe in truth as we like to imagine it. What he believed in was power, but not the kind you think. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche argued that life is driven by a fundamental force, the will to power. This isn't mere domination or political control. It's the deep, relentless urge of every living thing to grow, to overcome, to transform itself. Think of a tree breaking through concrete, reaching for light, a child struggling to master language, an artist sacrificing everything to create. This is the will to power, not greed, but becoming. But Nietzsche saw modern society as a graveyard for this vitality. Religion, morality, even democracy, systems designed, in his view, to suppress strength and individuality. He called it slave morality, a morality invented by the weak to shackle the strong. Qualities like humility, obedience, and pity
became virtues, while ambition, pride, and creativity were branded as sins. The result? A world of what he called the last man, a comfortable, safe, unremarkable creature who fears risk, craves entertainment, and avoids suffering at all costs. The will to power demands the opposite. It calls for the creation of new values, even if it means destroying the old ones. It urges us to embrace struggle, to risk failure, to live dangerously. But there's a darker edge. Left unchecked, the will to power can become monstrous. History is littered with tyrants and ideologues who claim to transcend good and evil, only to leave blood-soaked ruins behind. Nietzsche wasn't giving us license for cruelty. He was issuing a challenge. Will you let the world shape you into something small, safe, and obedient? Or will you shape yourself, even if it means walking alone into the unknown? The will to power is not about conquering others. It's about conquering the greatest obstacle of all, yourself. The problem of future persons. Do future lives matter? Imagine a factory dumping toxins into a river. The effects won't be felt for decades. By then, the managers will be dead, the company dissolved. The people poisoned won't even have been born yet. Did anyone really do them harm? This is the problem of future persons, and it forces us to confront a strange truth about morality. We tend to think of harm as something done to someone, real, present, and breathing. But future people don't exist yet. They have no names, no faces, no legal standing. So how can we owe them anything? Yet every choice we make ripples forward. Burning fossil fuels warms a planet our descendants must inherit. Decisions about nuclear waste, biodiversity, and even technological risks aren't just about us. They're about people who don't exist yet. Philosopher Derek Parfit posed a chilling scenario. Imagine two energy policies. Policy A causes mild climate damage, slightly lowering future quality of life. Policy B causes severe damage, leading to widespread suffering centuries from now. But here's the twist. The people alive under Policy B will be entirely different individuals than under Policy A. Different choices today mean different people tomorrow. So, did Policy B harm anyone? The people it harms wouldn't have existed without it. This isn't just theoretical. Every birth is the product of billions of contingencies. A sneeze, a missed bus, a split-second decision could mean an entirely different person comes into being. Can we harm or help someone who wouldn't exist otherwise? The question ripples into ethics, politics, and philosophy. If future lives matter, how far should we go to protect them? Should we sacrifice comfort now for people we'll never meet? Or are we free to act as we please, knowing the unborn can't complain? The silence of future generations is haunting. They can't speak. They can't vote. They can't stop us. But one day they may stand in the ruins of our choices, whispering questions we can no longer answer. The Anthropocentric Bias. Is the universe about us? For most of human history, we believed we were the center of everything. The earth stood still while the sun, moon, and stars revolved around us. The heavens existed for our gaze. The animals, the forests, even the laws of nature, placed here for our benefit. But one by one, science dismantled this comforting story. Copernicus showed the earth wasn't the center of the cosmos. Darwin revealed we weren't divine creations, but cousins of apes, products of blind evolution. And now, modern cosmology suggests we inhabit one planet, orbiting one star, among 100 billion in our galaxy, just one of perhaps 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. This is the anthropocentric bias, our deep-seated tendency to see ourselves as the universe's main character. Even today, traces of this bias remain. Some assume the universe's physical laws were fine-tuned for life. Others imagine alien civilizations eagerly awaiting contact with us. But what if these are illusions? What if life, consciousness, and humanity are cosmic accidents, tiny sparks in an indifferent void? Consider this. For every second that's passed since the Big Bang, trillions of stars have lived and died without any witness. For every habitable planet, there may be millions of barren rocks drifting in endless night. Carl Sagan famously called Earth a pale blue dot, a speck of dust suspended in a sunbeam. But even that may exaggerate our place. The universe existed for 13.8 billion years before us and will continue long after we're gone. And yet, we yearn for meaning. We tell stories of destiny, purpose, and cosmic design. Perhaps it's our way of surviving the crushing vastness. But there's another possibility. What if the universe isn't about us and doesn't need to be? What if meaning isn't found in the stars but in how we treat each other here, on this fragile rock? The universe doesn't care about you, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe it's your chance to care about it. Hyperobjects. Things too big to think about. There are things so vast, so complex, that your mind can't fully grasp them. Global warming, nuclear fallout, the internet, the Milky Way. Philosopher Timothy Morton calls these hyperobjects, entities so massive in time and space that they defy our ability to think about them as a whole. Take climate change. You can feel a hot summer, see a flooded street, but can you truly imagine the totality of carbon molecules warming the planet, storms reshaping continents and oceans rising over centuries? It's too big. Or think about plastic. That bottle you throw away today might outlive civilizations. Tiny particles of it swirl in oceans, embedded in fish, drifting in the air we breathe. A single object spreads across space and time until it's no longer an object at all. Hyperobjects are disturbing because they break our usual sense of scale. We're wired to notice tigers in the grass, not carbon dioxide across millennia. Our minds evolved for the immediate, the local. Even the universe itself is a hyperobject. Stars exploding millions of light years away, black holes swallowing time, galaxies colliding in slow motion. From where you stand, it's impossible to see the whole picture. Morton argues that hyperobjects force us to rethink reality. They don't exist out there in some distant realm. They permeate us. You're breathing them, eating them, living inside them. And they also force us to confront our limits. How do you act responsibly towards something you can't fully comprehend? How do you fight a problem so big it feels invisible? Perhaps we can't ever see hyperobjects in their entirety, but we can feel their shadows. Heat waves, extinctions, microplastics, anxiety. The trick is to act anyway, even in the face of incomprehensibility, because whether or not you can think about them, they're already thinking about you. Compatibilism. Freedom. Within fate. You're standing at a crossroads. One path leads to determinism. Everything is caused, inevitable, written in the stars. The other leads to free will, true, uncaused choice. But what if both paths are illusions? Philosophers like David Hume and Daniel Dennett offer a third way, compatibilism. The idea that free will and determinism aren't enemies, but two sides of the same coin. Here's how it works. Imagine a river flowing toward the sea. You can't control the river's direction. That's determinism. But you're in a boat with a paddle. You can steer left or right within the current. Your choices don't break the laws of physics. They work through them. Compatibilists argue that freedom doesn't mean breaking causality. It means acting according to your desires, values, and reasoning, without external coercion. Think of a prisoner in a cell. He can't leave. No freedom there. Now imagine someone walking freely down a street, following her plans and goals. She's still subject to gravity, biology, and society, but her actions reflect her will. That's compatibilist freedom. This view redefines responsibility. You didn't choose your genes or upbringing. but you're still the one weighing options, forming intentions, and shaping your future. You are both determined and free. Daniel Dennett calls it freedom evolved, a kind of agency that emerges from complexity. Like a chess program evaluating millions of moves, we're shaped by rules but still making real decisions within them. Critics push back. If your desires are determined by forces beyond you, are they truly yours? Or are you a puppet whose strings are invisible? But compatibilism flips the question. Does freedom have to mean ultimate control, or is it enough that we experience ownership over our lives? Perhaps we don't need to break the chain of cause and effect to live meaningfully. You can't stop the river, but you can decide where to paddle. The trolley problem. Would you pull the lever? A runaway trolley hurtles down the tracks. Ahead, 5 workers stand frozen, unable to move. You're near a lever. Pull it, and the trolley switches tracks, where only 1 worker stands. Do you pull the lever, sacrificing 1 to save 5? This is the trolley problem, a thought experiment first proposed by Philippa Foot in 1967 and later expanded by Judith Jarvis Thomson. It's deceptively simple, but cracks open deep questions about morality. On the surface, it seems obvious: save more lives. This is utilitarianism, the idea, championed by philosophers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, that the right action is the one that maximizes happiness and minimizes suffering. But morality isn't just math. Imagine a variation. Instead of a lever, you're on a bridge next to a large man. Pushing him onto the tracks would stop the trolley, saving 5 lives. Suddenly, the choice feels monstrous. Why? The outcome is the same: 5 live, 1 dies. But intuitively, most people recoil. Kantian ethics offers one reason. Immanuel Kant argued we must treat individuals as ends in themselves, never as mere means to an end. Pushing the man violates his inherent dignity. But if that's true, why does pulling the lever feel acceptable? Is it because your action is indirect, or because we instinctively fear getting blood on our hands? Modern neuroscience complicates things further. Brain scans reveal that in impersonal cases like pulling levers, people engage areas linked to logic and calculation. In personal cases like pushing someone, emotional centers light up. Our morality may be less about reason than gut instinct. The trolley problem forces us to confront a haunting truth. Moral decisions aren't clean equations. They're tangled in emotion, culture, and human bias. And if you think you know what you do, consider this. When faced with a real choice, not a thought experiment, how certain are you that reason, not fear or instinct, would guide your hand? Kant's categorical imperative, universal moral law. Immanuel Kant believed morality wasn't a matter of feelings or consequences. It wasn't about happiness, utility, or even compassion. To him, morality was a question of reason. He proposed the categorical imperative, a principle meant to cut through the mess of human emotions and cultural norms. It asks one simple question: could you will your action into a universal law, applied to everyone, everywhere, for all time? Imagine you're tempted to lie to escape trouble. Under Kant's test, you must ask, what if lying became a universal law? A world where everyone lied when convenient. Truth itself would collapse. Promises, contracts, trust, all meaningless. Therefore, you must not lie. Kant rejected utilitarian calculations. No weighing lives, no playing God. You don't steal even if your family is starving. You don't kill even if it would save thousands. His ethic was rigid, almost brutal. Critics called it inhuman. But for Kant, morality wasn't about comfort. It was about acting from duty, guided by reason alone. In a chilling historical twist, Nazi officers later used duty as their defense at Nuremberg. Kant would have been horrified. His imperative demands, treating people as ends in themselves, never as tools or obstacles. Using human beings as mere means, even in the name of duty, is the deepest moral failure. But the categorical imperative raises unsettling questions. What about moral conflicts? If hiding a refugee violates truth-telling, yet turning them in violates their dignity, what then? And deeper still, can reason alone ground morality? Or is it always entangled with empathy, fear, and culture? Kant wanted a perfect universal law, etched into the fabric of rationality itself. But in the chaos of real life, morality may resist such clean geometry. The world isn't ruled by logic, so what happens when reason and survival collide? Utilitarianism. Should you maximize happiness? In 1789, Jeremy Bentham penned a radical idea. It is the greatest happiness of the greatest number that is the measure of right and wrong. This became the foundation of utilitarianism, the belief that the moral worth of an action depends on its outcome. Happiness is good. Suffering is bad. Morality, therefore, is math. Maximize pleasure, minimize pain. At first glance, it feels intuitive. Sacrifice one to save five. Spend resources where they do the most good. Philosopher Peter Singer takes it further, arguing that if we can prevent suffering cheaply, donating to save lives, for example, we are morally obligated to do so. But utility has a dark side. Imagine a surgeon who can save 5 dying patients by harvesting organs from one healthy bystander. Would utilitarianism justify killing the one? Or consider the happiness machine of Robert Nozick's thought experiment? You could plug in and live a life of endless joy, unaware it's simulated. Would you? Most recoil at the thought. It suggests happiness alone isn't enough. We value authenticity, freedom, meaning. History has shown where blind pursuit of utility can lead. Mao's great leap forward, justified by promises of a brighter future, resulted in millions dead. Bentham's cold calculus doesn't account for human dignity or rights. John Stuart Mill tried to soften it. He distinguished higher pleasures, art, philosophy, love, from mere animal satisfaction. But can such values really be quantified? And what about future generations? If maximizing happiness means sacrificing our comforts to prevent climate collapse centuries from now, are we willing? Utilitarianism forces us into uncomfortable arithmetic. It asks, how much suffering is acceptable for how much joy? How many lives saved justify a single atrocity? The numbers may add up. But can morality really be reduced to a ledger? Sartre's bad faith. Are you lying to yourself? Jean-Paul Sartre believed freedom is terrifying. He argued that human existence has no built-in meaning, no divine blueprint, no cosmic purpose. You are free, radically, unbearably free, to define yourself through your actions. But most people, Sartre said, run from this freedom. They live in bad faith, lying to themselves about who they are and what they can become. Imagine a waiter so absorbed in his role that he becomes it. His gestures exaggerated, his words rehearsed. He's not a person playing a waiter. He's a waiter playing at being a person. Or think of someone who says, I can't leave this job. It's who I am. This isn't truth. It's bad faith, a denial of the freedom to choose differently. Sartre's insight is uncomfortable. It suggests we use labels, student, parent, citizen, not as tools, but as shields. Shields from the abyss of choice. He offered no comforting escape. You can't blame biology, society, or even fate. Every act of conformity is still your choice. Refuse, and you're free. But unmoored, responsible for every consequence. History is filled with people trapped in bad faith, soldiers who committed atrocities claiming, I was just following orders, bureaucrats insisting, it wasn't my decision. But Sartre's challenge isn't just for the extreme, it's for the everyday. Are you choosing your life or drifting through it, letting roles and routines decide for you. This freedom isn't the uplifting kind found in slogans. It's the kind that strips you bare, no excuses, no destinies, just you, standing before a blank canvas with a brush in trembling hands. And the question Sartre leaves us with is brutal. If you don't decide who you are, then who or what will? The problem of evil. Why does suffering exist? A child dies screaming in the rubble of an airstrike. A young mother wastes away from cancer. Entire civilizations are swallowed by famine and war. For millennia, people have asked, if there is a God, omniscient, omnipotent, and good, why does evil exist? This is the problem of evil, one of the oldest and most powerful arguments against a benevolent creator. Epicurus phrased it starkly. Is God willing to prevent evil, but not able? Then he is impotent. Is he able, but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Theologians have wrestled with this for centuries. Augustine argued that evil isn't a substance, but a lack of good, a shadow where light should be. It's a consequence of free will. Humans chose sin, and suffering followed. But this raises deeper questions. Why would an all-knowing God grant free will if it leads to genocide and torture? Couldn't he create creatures free yet incapable of cruelty? Leibniz famously claimed we live in the best of all possible worlds. Voltaire mocked him in Candide, depicting a world of absurd disasters and brutality. Modern thinkers extend the problem beyond religion. If the universe is indifferent, why does it produce such staggering pain? Why is life so exquisitely tuned to suffering, nerves wired to agony, minds prone to despair? Richard Dawkins writes that nature is neither cruel nor kind, but indifferent. Yet indifference doesn't explain the visceral, unrelenting character of human suffering. The problem isn't abstract. It's in the hospital room, the concentration camp, the earthquake zone. If there's a plan, it's unreadable. If there's justice, it's delayed beyond recognition. And if there isn't, then we're left alone in a universe where suffering is not a test, not a punishment, not a prelude to paradise, just a feature of existence, silent and absolute. The problem of other minds. Are others conscious? You see someone wince in pain. You hear them laugh, watch them cry, listen to them say, "I'm so happy," or "I'm afraid." But how do you know they feel anything at all? This is the problem of other minds, the unsettling idea that we can never directly access another person's inner world. We assume others are conscious because they act like us. But is that enough? Could they be philosophical zombies, perfectly imitating human behavior, but empty inside? This isn't just academic. Think of the people closest to you. You know their habits, their voices, their stories. But their thoughts, their raw subjective experience, the what it's like to be them, is locked away, forever out of reach. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein warned about this in Philosophical Investigations. Language, he argued, can describe pain or joy, but it can't transmit them. Words like hurt or love are only labels for private experiences we can never fully share. Neuroscience doesn't solve it either. We can map brain activity, measure dopamine spikes, watch neurons fire. But none of this proves there's a self behind the circuits. And now AI deepens the question. When a machine says, "I'm scared," or "I want to live," is there a mind behind the words, or just code mimicking emotion? This thought gets darker. How would you know if even your closest friend was conscious? Or if they were merely a reflection, a clever mirror giving you back the responses you expect? The philosopher Thomas Nagel once asked, "What is it like to be a bat?" You might understand a bat's biology, but you'll never know what it feels like to navigate the world through sonar, to hang upside down in a cave, to be a bat. Now ask, what is it like to be anyone other than you? You'll never know. You'll never even get close. The people around you smile, speak, and hold your hand. But their inner worlds are sealed, like locked rooms you can never enter. Perhaps the most you can do is knock and listen for an answer. Nietzsche's Übermensch, becoming something beyond human. Friedrich Nietzsche saw something most couldn't. He saw a world where God was dead, not murdered by atheists, but by centuries of science, reason, and doubt. The moral foundation of the West was crumbling, and in the rubble, he saw danger. Without a higher power, humanity risked falling into nihilism, a belief that nothing matters. Left unchecked, it would lead to despair, stagnation, and the rise of what he called the last man, a creature obsessed with comfort, avoiding risk, and living a shallow, meaningless life. But Nietzsche didn't just warn of the void. He pointed to a way out, the Übermensch, often mistranslated as Superman, but closer to overhuman or beyond human. The Übermensch isn't about physical strength or domination. It's about transformation, a person who, in the absence of divine rules, creates their own values, their own meaning. Imagine an artist painting without a template, inventing colors no one has seen. That's the Übermensch, not bound by tradition, but fearless in shaping a new vision for life. This is not an easy path. To become an Übermensch means embracing suffering, chaos, and uncertainty. Nietzsche's famous line, "One must still have chaos within to give birth to a dancing star," captures the agony and beauty of this creation. But there's a warning here too. History shows us how easily this idea can be twisted. Totalitarian leaders misused Nietzsche's words, turning the Übermensch into a symbol of domination and violence, exactly the opposite of his intent. The real challenge of the Übermensch isn't power over others. It's power over yourself, the courage to live authentically, to confront the abyss and still say yes to life. Nietzsche asked, can you step beyond fear, beyond herd morality, beyond the need for cosmic guarantees? Can you forge meaning in a universe that offers none? The Übermensch is not a hero to worship. It's a possibility, a mirror asking, will you remain human or create something more? Eco's infinite library, every book that could ever exist. Imagine a library so vast it contains every book ever written, and every book that ever could be written, not just Shakespeare, Dostoevsky, and Homer, but also every possible variation of their works, every typo, every mistranslation, every sentence rearranged in infinite ways. In this library, there's a perfect biography of your life, even the details you've forgotten. And right next to it, a version where you made every possible different choice. This is the idea at the heart of Jorge Luis Borges' story, The Library of Babel, later explored by Umberto Eco. A universe-sized library containing every combination of letters, every truth, every lie, every work of genius, and every page of gibberish. At first, it sounds enchanting, infinite knowledge, but think deeper. Most of the library is noise, meaningless arrangements of letters. The chance of finding a coherent sentence, let alone a masterpiece, is astronomically small. And here's the existential twist. If every possible book exists, does meaning itself dissolve? Is your favorite novel unique, or just one version among infinite meaningless variants? This library isn't just fiction. It mirrors real ideas in mathematics and physics. The multiverse theory suggests infinite universes, each slightly different from the last. Somewhere out there, there's a version of you reading a different chapter, living a different life. But infinite possibilities bring infinite absurdities. In one universe, you're a world leader. In another, you never existed. In yet another, you exist. But your entire life is a single sentence in a book that no one will ever read. Borges asked, what good is a library where all books exist but none can be found? Meaning, it seems, isn't about the existence of all possibilities. It's about the stories we choose to tell, the patterns we pull from the chaos. The library exists, but can you find your place in it before you're lost among the shelves? Nietzsche's Last Man, a comfortable hell. Imagine a world without war, without hunger, without suffering, a place where everyone is safe, comfortable, entertained. Sounds like paradise, doesn't it? Not to Friedrich Nietzsche. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he warned of the last man, a future humanity so obsessed with comfort and security that it sacrifices everything else. Ambition, creativity, risk, even meaning. The last man fears pain above all. He avoids danger. He scorns greatness because it demands sacrifice. He no longer dreams of stars or gods or heights. He says, "We have invented happiness," and he yawns. The last man is not evil. He's boring. His life is easy, predictable, safe. But in his quest to eliminate all struggle, he has also eliminated what makes life worth living. Nietzsche saw this as a kind of comfortable hell, a world of shallow pleasures, endless distractions, and quiet despair. No one suffers greatly, but no one achieves greatly either. Does this sound familiar? Streaming platforms feed endless entertainment. Algorithms soothe us with curated news. Food, shopping, and conversation arrive at our door with a tap. Risk feels unnecessary. Boredom feels intolerable. We've built a world where almost anything uncomfortable is seen as a problem to solve. But in doing so, have we become too small to face the challenges that truly matter? Nietzsche believed life's meaning comes from struggle, from striving, failing, and overcoming. Without danger, there's no courage. Without hardship, no greatness. The last man avoids all this. He prefers security to freedom, comfort to growth, pleasure to purpose. And here's the disturbing question. Are we already becoming him? Nietzsche's challenge is clear. Reject the last man's seduction. Choose risk over safety. Create, even when there's no guarantee of success. Suffer, even when comfort is an option. Because if you're not willing to face pain, you may already be living in a padded cell of your own making. The illusion of progress. Are we just moving in circles? We tell ourselves we're moving forward, from stone tools to space travel, from cave paintings to quantum computers, from blood-soaked empires to global declarations of human rights. The story of humanity feels like a straight line, one of evolution, improvement, progress. But what if it isn't? What if progress is just an illusion? Look back far enough, and you'll see the same cycles repeating under different masks. Civilizations rise in triumph, convinced they've reached the pinnacle of human achievement. Then comes complacency, corruption, collapse, the ruins of Rome, the fall of the Maya, the countless forgotten kingdoms swallowed by jungle and sand. We rebuild, we innovate, but the patterns remain. Greed, war, environmental exhaustion. We speak of never again while walking the same roads to ruin. Even technology, our proudest marker of advancement, has its shadows. It gives us vaccines and clean water, but also nuclear weapons and mass surveillance. Each new invention solves problems while birthing unforeseen ones. Antibiotics lead to superbugs. Fossil fuels lift billions out of poverty while setting the planet on fire. Are we moving forward, or are we running endlessly on a cosmic treadmill, mistaking motion for meaning? Philosopher Oswald Spengler argued that civilizations are like living organisms. They are born, grow, peak, and then decay, locked in a life cycle as inevitable as a flower, blooming and withering. No amount of innovation can escape entropy. Even on a universal scale, progress falters, stars burn out, galaxies drift apart. The universe itself edges toward heat death, where no work can be done, no life can thrive, no progress can ever be made again. So what does it mean for us? Perhaps our achievements aren't steps on a ladder, but footprints on a wheel, destined to circle back to where we began. Perhaps all our striving is just a temporary flicker in an endless loop of rise and fall. Or perhaps progress was never the point. If there's no finish line, maybe the meaning isn't in reaching some ultimate goal, but in the act of walking itself. But then a quieter thought creeps in. What if the wheel isn't even moving? What if it's all already over, and we just haven't realized it yet? Hume's bundle theory. There is no unified you. David Hume sat down to examine the self. He searched carefully through his thoughts, his feelings, his sensations. But wherever he looked, he found nothing. No core, no soul, no self that tied it all together. What he found instead was a shifting collection of perceptions, joy, pain, hunger, memories, flashing in and out of existence like lanterns in the dark. This led Hume to propose something radical. There is no unified you. You are just a bundle of experiences, stitched together by habit and memory. Think of a river. It looks continuous, flowing endlessly. But at every moment, the water is new. The river is only a process, not a thing. Hume believed the self is like that, a process, not an entity. Today, neuroscience seems to echo him. Studies show there's no single spot in the brain where you reside. Consciousness appears to be a distributed network, different parts handling memory, vision, emotion, all coordinated like an orchestra with no conductor. Split brain experiments make it even stranger. Patients whose brains were divided showed signs of two separate consciousnesses within one skull, each unaware of the other. Which one was the self? If Hume was right, then the sense of being a single, continuous person is an illusion, a convenient story your brain tells itself. So what happens when that story stops? When the bundle unravels? There may be no real you beneath the thoughts, no hidden essence waiting to be discovered. Only a flickering stream of sensations, arising and vanishing moment by moment. The self you cling to might never have existed at all. Simone de Beauvoir's other, is identity always oppression? In 1949, Simone de Beauvoir published The Second Sex, a book so incendiary it was banned by the Vatican and burned in public squares. Her argument was deceptively simple. Woman is not a biological fact, it's a social construct. She wrote, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman." De Beauvoir saw identity as a double-edged sword. It gives us belonging, but also confines us. The moment you are named, woman, man, worker, mother, immigrant, you are seen not as yourself, but as part of a category. You become the other. The other is defined not by what it is, but by what it isn't. Woman is not man. Black is not white. Colonized is not colonizer. In every pair, one side is made the default. The other is cast as deviation, lesser, alien, exotic. This wasn't abstract philosophy for de Beauvoir. She'd lived it. As a brilliant student in Paris, she watched male philosophers dismiss her ideas as emotional while quoting each other's as universal. But she warned, this isn't just about gender, it's about every identity marker society uses to cage us. Think of the immigrant called a foreigner even after decades in a country, or the worker defined by their job title as if that's the sum of their existence. De Beauvoir's solution was radical freedom. Refuse to let labels define you. But she also knew how hard that was. Identity is comforting. It tells you who you are. And yet, every label, even the flattering ones, comes at a cost. To be this is to never fully be anything else. So the question lingers. Do we create identities to empower ourselves, or to make peace with invisible chains? The causal closure of physics. No room for the soul. Modern science tells a simple story. The universe is a closed system. Every event is caused by prior events, governed by physical laws. No gaps, no exceptions. This principle is called the causal closure of physics. It means that if we know all the particles and forces in a system, we can, in theory, predict everything that happens within it. At first glance, it's elegant, but it carries a chilling implication. If physics accounts for everything, where does that leave your mind? When you decide to raise your hand, neurons fire, muscles contract, your arm lifts. But what caused the decision itself? Was it your conscious soul, or just brain chemistry? If every action has a physical cause, then there's no room for non-physical influences, no ghost in the machine, no immaterial you pulling the levers. Descartes imagined the soul interacting with the body through the pineal gland. Today, neuroscience locates decisions in prefrontal cortex activity. But does that explain experience, or just describe its mechanics? Critics of causal closure argue that consciousness doesn't fit neatly into physics. Thoughts and feelings aren't made of particles, they're subjective first-person phenomena. But materialists counter, if the mind affects matter, it must obey physical laws, or it's magic. So which is it? Are you a self, steering your body through will? Or a complex biological machine, operating on inputs and outputs, your sense of self just an illusion of electrical signals? This isn't just philosophy, it touches everything. Free will, morality, life after death. If there's no room in physics for the soul, what survives when the brain shuts down? You feel like more than atoms and molecules. But perhaps that's just what atoms say when they're arranged a certain way. The universe is a closed system. The question is, are you inside or just part of it? McTaggart's Unreality of Time. Does time even flow? Time feels like the most undeniable thing in the universe. Seconds tick forward. The past recedes. The future rushes toward us. We age. We die. But what if time isn't real? In 1908, the philosopher McTaggart made a strange, unsettling claim. Time is an illusion. He argued that for time to exist, events must be ordered into past, present, and future. But this ordering collapses under scrutiny. The present is fleeting. A knife edge between what no longer exists and what doesn't yet exist. The past is gone. The future isn't real yet. So where is time? McTaggart proposed that our sense of flow from past to future is a trick of consciousness. Events simply are, laid out like a frozen tapestry. There's no motion, no becoming, just an eternal block where every moment exists at once. This idea sounds abstract, even absurd, but modern physics flirts with it. Einstein's theory of relativity shows that time isn't universal. There's no cosmic now. Two observers in different frames of reference won't even agree on what's simultaneous. In the block universe model, all moments, your birth, this very instant, your final breath, coexist eternally. Time doesn't flow. It's already there, like frames in a film strip. You don't move through time. You're pinned to it. It's a haunting thought. The future isn't open. The past isn't lost. You're just a fixed pattern in four-dimensional space-time with no more freedom than a drawing on a page. But if time is an illusion, what does that mean for change? For memory? For the very idea of life? Perhaps the flow we feel is just the brain processing static events, like a needle tracing a record. Or perhaps becoming is as unreal as dreams after waking. McTaggart's vision leaves us suspended, staring at a universe where nothing truly begins, and nothing ever ends. Heidegger's being toward death. Death shapes life. Martin Heidegger didn't see death as an event at the end of life. He saw it as the defining feature of existence itself. For Heidegger, humans aren't simply alive. We are beings toward death. From the moment we draw breath, we're moving toward an unknowable end. This isn't meant to depress you. It's meant to wake you up. Most of us, Heidegger observed, live in a state he called inauthenticity. We bury ourselves in routines, distractions, and social roles. Worker, spouse, citizen. As if these could shield us from our mortality. We tell ourselves death is far away, abstract, something that happens to others. But the truth is more unsettling. Death isn't a distant horizon. It's present in every choice you make. Every later you whisper to yourself is a gamble. There may be no later. To live authentically, Heidegger argued, is to confront your finitude head-on. To accept that life is not a rehearsal, not a draft to be revised later. This is it. But what does that mean? Imagine two people. One believes life is infinite. They postpone dreams, defer apologies, hoard plans for someday. The other knows death is coming. They savor moments. They speak their truth. They risk failure. Heidegger believed only the second person is truly alive. Awareness of death strips away illusions. It forces you to see what matters. Yet this awareness is terrifying. It demands courage to stand naked before the void, to say, I am finite, I will vanish. And yet, I will live fully now. In the end, death isn't the opposite of life. It's what gives life weight, urgency, meaning. The clock isn't ticking toward an end. It's ticking to remind you, this moment is all you'll ever own.
Thomas Nagel's What Is It Like to Be a Bat? Close your eyes and imagine being a bat. Not just flapping your arms or hanging upside down, but actually being a bat, navigating the world through echolocation, hearing sound as shape, and living in a dark cave with thousands of others. Can you picture it? Philosopher Thomas Nagel argued you can't. In his famous 1974 essay, What Is It Like to Be a Bat? He said there's something about consciousness, about being, that no amount of scientific knowledge can fully explain. You can learn everything about bats, their biology, their neural pathways, how their sonar works. But knowing these facts won't let you feel what it's like to hang from a ceiling, to sense insects through sound waves, to be a bat. This is the hard problem of consciousness. There's a gap between objective knowledge and subjective experience. Nagel called this the subjective character of experience, what it feels like from the inside. No matter how detailed our science becomes, that inner world remains inaccessible. Now turn the question around. Others can study your brain, your behavior, your life. But can they ever know what it's like to be you? To feel your joy, your pain, your private thoughts? Or are you too a mystery sealed within your own mind? This isn't just about bats, it's about the limits of human understanding. If subjective experience can't be reduced to physical facts, then even a perfect science of the brain might never explain consciousness. And here's the eerie part. You may be surrounded by conscious minds, or only clever biological machines. You'll never truly know. We think we understand reality, but Nagel reminds us there's always something more, something that can't be seen, measured, or shared. You can describe the world from the outside, but what about the inside? What about you? The split brain experiments. One body, two minds. In the 1960s, neuroscientist Roger Sperry performed surgeries that would reveal one of the strangest truths about the human brain. His patients suffered from severe epilepsy. To stop seizures from spreading, surgeons severed the corpus callosum, the thick bundle of nerves connecting the brain's left and right hemispheres. The result seemed miraculous. Seizures stopped. Patients felt normal. But then came the tests. When Sperry showed an image to a patient's left eye, processed by the right hemisphere, they couldn't name what they saw. Language lives mostly in the left hemisphere, and the two sides could no longer communicate. But when asked to draw with their left hand, they sketched the object perfectly. They saw it, they knew it, they just couldn't say it. It got stranger. In one test, the left hemisphere was shown a picture of a chicken claw. The right hemisphere saw a snowy scene. When asked to point to related images, the right hand, controlled by the left hemisphere, chose a chicken. The left hand, controlled by the right hemisphere, chose a shovel. When asked to explain, the speaking left hemisphere, unaware of the snow scene, confidently said, "The shovel is to clean out the chicken coop." It wasn't lying. It was confabulating, inventing reasons for actions it didn't control. Sperry's work suggested something shocking. When the hemispheres were separated, two independent streams of consciousness emerged, two selves in one skull, which raises an unsettling question. If cutting a few nerve fibers creates two minds, was there ever truly one? Or is the unity of the self just a fragile illusion held together by a thread of connections?
Boltzmann brain. Are you a random consciousness? Imagine this. You're floating alone in the void. No body, no stars, no universe. And yet, you're thinking. You remember a life on Earth, friends, family, a planet rich with forests and oceans. You feel certain of it. But what if none of it was ever real? This is the nightmare of the Boltzmann brain, a thought experiment born from 19th century physics. Physicist Ludwig Boltzmann proposed that our universe's order, stars, galaxies, life itself, arose from random fluctuations in a chaotic cosmos. Given enough time, particles swirling in entropy could spontaneously assemble into anything, even a functioning brain. A brain complete with false memories, sensations, and the illusion of history. In Boltzmann's view, this was a statistical oddity, but later thinkers pushed the logic further. In an infinite universe, it's far more likely for a single brain to form randomly than for an entire universe to arise naturally. Here's the disturbing twist. If that's true, then it's vastly more probable that you are such a brain, a lonely consciousness flickering into existence, hallucinating a life, a planet, a cosmos, than that you're part of a genuine, orderly universe. There's no way to prove otherwise. Every memory, every sensation could be part of the hallucination. Even this thought, the one telling you it might be a hallucination, could itself be fake. Modern cosmology has wrestled with this paradox. Some argue it exposes flaws in theories of infinite universes. Others admit it's an open wound in our understanding of reality. But for you, the Boltzmann brain poses a more personal terror. If you are nothing but a momentary blip in chaos, then everything, your loves, your struggles, your identity, is a phantom. And when this brief spark of thought fades, nothing remains, not even the illusion of having ever been.
The heat, death of the universe. Does it all end? Look up at the night sky. Stars blaze like eternal beacons. Galaxies whirl in endless dance. It feels infinite, but physics whispers a darker truth. Everything ends. This is the fate known as heat death, the slow, inevitable death of the universe itself. The second law of thermodynamics teaches us that entropy, the measure of disorder, always increases. Stars burn their fuel, radiating heat. Galaxies collide, scattering matter. Over unimaginable eons, energy spreads thin, evenly across space. When entropy reaches its maximum, there will be no gradients left to drive change. No light, no heat, no life. The universe will be a vast frozen expanse of uniform nothingness, a cosmic graveyard. Physicists predict this could take trillions upon trillions of years. Long after the last stars have burned out, black holes will evaporate through Hawking radiation. Even subatomic particles may decay. And then, silence. To some, this sounds like science fiction. But it's the leading theory in cosmology. The universe isn't just expanding, it's accelerating. Galaxies are flying apart so fast that eventually, each will vanish beyond the horizon, unobservable forever. You'll never know it happens. Humanity will be long gone. But the thought lingers. If the universe ends in heat death, was there ever meaning to its story? Nietzsche spoke of eternal recurrence, a universe endlessly cycling, repeating itself forever. Heat death suggests the opposite, a universe where even time ceases to flow because nothing remains to mark its passage. And here's the deeper horror. If consciousness requires energy, thought itself will vanish. No one to remember, no one to mourn, not even silence.
because silence implies the possibility of sound, just absence. The stars overhead feel eternal, but they too are dying embers. The night sky is a photograph of the past, light from fires already dimming. One day, the photograph will fade, and when the last particle decays, the universe will slip into perfect stillness, never to awaken. Teletransportation paradox is a perfect copy, still you. In the distant future, technology has advanced beyond imagination. You step into a teleportation pod. In an instant, a scanner maps every atom of your body, bones, organs, brain, down to the quantum level. Your original body is disintegrated. At the same time, on Mars, an identical arrangement of atoms is assembled, molecule for molecule, neuron for neuron. To the people there, you emerge from the pod, smiling, memories intact. But here's the question. Is the person stepping out really you? This is the teletransportation paradox, and it's more disturbing than it first appears. At first, it feels like a clever trick. Destroy the old, build the new. But think carefully. If the Mars replica is you, what was destroyed? Did you actually travel? Or were you killed, replaced by a convincing copy? Philosopher Derek Parfit used this thought experiment to question the very idea of personal identity. Now imagine a malfunction. The original isn't destroyed. Two identical yous exist. Same memories, same personality, both convinced they're you. Which one is the real you? Parfit argued there isn't a meaningful answer. Identity, he said, isn't about a deep, unchanging essence. It's about psychological continuity, memories, intentions, experiences flowing forward. But if that's true, then you are not a singular, indivisible self. You're a pattern, a process that can, in principle, be duplicated or destroyed. In the age of cloning, mind uploads, and artificial intelligence, this paradox isn't science fiction anymore. It's a question waiting in the shadows of our future. And it leads to a chilling possibility. Perhaps survival doesn't require you to persist. Only a copy good enough to fool everyone, even itself. The paradox of the present is now an illusion. The past is gone, a memory. The future hasn't arrived. The present seems like the only place you exist. Yet when you try to grasp it, it slips away. This is the paradox of the present, the idea that now isn't a solid point in time, but a fleeting illusion. St. Augustine wrestled with this 1,600 years ago. He wrote, "What then is time? If no one asks me, I know. If I wish to explain it, I know not." He noticed the present has no duration. If we try to measure now, it collapses into past and future, vanishing the moment we examine it. Modern neuroscience deepens the mystery. Studies suggest our brains don't perceive events instantaneously. Visual and auditory signals take milliseconds to process. The present we experience is already slightly in the past, a reconstructed simulation. Physics makes it stranger still. Einstein's relativity shows there's no universal now. Two observers moving differently can disagree on which events are simultaneous. In the fabric of space-time, all moments may exist equally. Your birth, your death, this very instant. Like pages in a book. So is the flow of time real? Or is now just a trick of consciousness, stitching events together into a story? Think of a movie reel. Each frame exists all at once, but you only see one at a time as the film passes through the projector. Perhaps reality is like that. Static frames flickering past the mind's eye, giving the illusion of motion. But if now is an illusion, what does that say about choice? About life? If the future already exists, are we only actors reading lines in a script written beyond our view? We cling to now as our anchor in existence. But perhaps the present isn't an island in time. It's a knife edge, razor thin, vanishing as soon as it's touched. The end of history. Are we done evolving? In 1992, political scientist Francis Fukuyama made a bold claim. History has ended. He didn't mean events would stop or time would freeze. He meant humanity had reached the final form of government, liberal democracy. After centuries of monarchies, empires, and revolutions, Fukuyama argued there were no better ideas left. No more grand struggles over ideology. No more world-changing revolutions. Just small tweaks to the system we already have. It was a triumphant vision, capitalism and democracy spreading worldwide, bringing peace and prosperity. But was it too soon to celebrate? Critics like Samuel Huntington warned of clashes of civilizations, cultural and religious conflicts that would persist long after political battles ended. Others pointed to rising authoritarianism, populism, and environmental collapse as signs that history was far from over. Even Fukuyama later admitted he might have underestimated humanity's ability to disrupt itself. Think of ancient Rome. It once believed it had perfected governance. Then came decline, corruption, and centuries of chaos. Could modern societies face the same fate? And here's a darker question. If we really have reached the end, what does that mean for us as individuals? Nietzsche warned of the last man, a humanity so comfortable and risk-averse that it loses all ambition. Without grand challenges, people turn inward, seeking only pleasure and security. History doesn't end with a bang. It ends with a yawn. Are we already seeing this? Endless scrolling, consumer comforts, political apathy, a world more connected than ever, yet fractured and distracted. Perhaps history isn't over. Perhaps it's merely paused, waiting for the next shock to wake us. Or perhaps the end of history isn't peace. It's stagnation, a silent drifting toward a future where nothing changes, because no one dares to change it. The mind-body problem. Are you meat or mind? You're thinking right now, a thought about a thought, maybe even a thought about this thought. But here's the question that has haunted philosophers for centuries. What is thinking? Is it just electrical activity in a lump of grey matter? Or is it something else, something immaterial, floating above the physical world? This is the mind-body problem, and it begins with a split. René Descartes believed in dualism. The mind and body are two distinct substances. The body is material, subject to the laws of physics. The mind, your thoughts, feelings, consciousness, is immaterial, existing in a separate realm. But this raises a puzzle. How does an immaterial mind push around a physical body? How do neurons in your brain, made of atoms, give rise to the sensation of pain, or the color red, or the taste of chocolate? Materialists argue the mind is nothing more than the brain. Neurons fire, chemicals flow, and somehow, consciousness emerges. But no one can explain how subjective experience arises from physical matter. This is the hard problem of consciousness, and science has no clear answer. Consider, if a brain is just a machine, could we simulate it perfectly on a computer? Would that simulation feel conscious? Or would it be an empty shell, processing information without awareness? And if thoughts are just patterns in neurons, are you any different from a highly advanced AI, one that thinks it's alive? The mind-body problem cuts to the core of existence. If your mind is immaterial, where is it? If it's purely physical, where does you end and the rest of the universe begin? Are you a ghost in a machine, or just the machine, dreaming of ghosts? The veil of ignorance. Designing a just society, blindfolded. Imagine you're about to be born into a new world. But there's a catch. You know nothing about who you'll be. Not your gender, race, wealth, health, or intelligence. You could be a billionaire's child, or a refugee, a healthy athlete, or someone born blind in a war zone. Now ask yourself, what kind of society would you want to design from behind this veil of ignorance? This is the thought experiment proposed by philosopher John Rawls in A Theory of Justice. It's one of the most influential ideas in modern political philosophy. Rawls believed that fairness requires stripping away personal bias. From behind the veil, self-interest disappears. You can't stack the deck in your favor because you don't know which hand you'll be dealt. Would you design a world where healthcare depends on wealth? Where education varies by zip code? Where some are born into privilege while others never get a chance? Probably not. Behind the veil, most people would choose principles that protect the worst off. You might allow inequality, but only if it benefits everyone. Rawls called this the difference principle. Inequalities are acceptable only if they improve the position of the least advantaged. But critics argue the veil asks too much. Robert Nozick countered that individuals should keep what they earn, even if life deals unequal hands. Others say the veil assumes we're all risk-averse. Some might gamble on being born lucky, yet the power of Rawls' idea remains. It's a moral mirror. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about how much of our success is luck, not merit. Take off the veil, and privilege blinds us to injustice. Put it on, and the world looks very different. Behind the veil, fairness isn't about helping others out of charity. It's about designing a system you could live in, no matter who you turn out to be. The tyranny of the majority. When democracy oppresses. Democracy promises freedom, power to the people, government by consent. But what if the greatest threat to your rights isn't a dictator or a king, but your neighbors? Alexis de Tocqueville warned of this in the 19th century. He called it the tyranny of the majority, a system where the will of the many crushes the rights of the few. In a democracy, laws reflect majority opinion. But what happens when that majority decides certain voices don't belong? When it votes to silence dissenters, oppress minorities, or enforce conformity? History provides chilling examples. In ancient Athens, the birthplace of democracy, the majority voted to execute Socrates for corrupting the youth. In the United States, Jim Crow laws were upheld for decades by popular support, even as they stripped millions of basic rights. And in modern times, democratic elections have brought authoritarian regimes to power. Leaders who used majority rule to dismantle freedoms once in office. John Stuart Mill addressed this in On Liberty. He argued that individual rights must be protected, even against democratic majorities. True freedom, he said, isn't just the right to vote. It's the right to live without fear of the mob's approval. But where do we draw the line? How do we balance collective decision-making with minority protection? Too much power to the majority, and we risk oppression. Too many checks on it, and democracy begins to resemble oligarchy. Today, the danger has evolved. Social media amplifies majority sentiment into viral outrage. Cancel culture, algorithmic echo chambers, public shaming, tools that can enforce moral conformity with frightening speed. We tell ourselves that democracy means freedom. But Tocqueville's warning remains. A society ruled by majority opinion alone is not always just. Sometimes it's simply a larger mob. Buddhist anatta. There is no self. Close your eyes. Try to find the you that feels so constant, so solid. Is it your body? Cells die and replace themselves every few years. Is it your thoughts? They flicker and vanish like fireflies. 2,000 years ago, the Buddha sat beneath a fig tree and saw through the illusion. He realized there is no unchanging core inside us, no soul, no eternal I that survives the flow of time. He called this anatta, non-self. The insight wasn't abstract. It came from observing life itself. A child grows into an adult into an elder. Desires arise and fade. Emotions bloom and decay. Where is the unbroken thread that ties them all together? Modern science often repeats this mantra: neurons, synapses, chemical signals. But anatta isn't about brain scans. It's about the human condition. Think of a mother with Alzheimer's. Her memories unravel. Her personality shifts. At what point does the daughter sitting by her bedside whisper, "She's not my mom anymore"? Or, "Consider the rage you felt yesterday. Is it still part of you? Or was it a passing storm, gone the moment it subsided?" The Buddha saw our clinging to a self as the root of suffering, the fear of loss, the craving for permanence, the endless defense of ego. None of it necessary if there's no self to protect. But this realization isn't comforting. It's like staring into a mirror and seeing nothing. No watcher behind the eyes, just a stream of sensations, thoughts and memories, here for a moment, then gone. If there's no one steering the ship, what exactly is living your life? Searle's Chinese room. Can machines really understand? Imagine you're locked in a room. Through a slot in the door, someone slides in slips of paper covered in Chinese characters. You don't speak Chinese, but you have a massive instruction manual written in your native language. For every symbol you see, you follow the manual's rules to match it with another set of symbols and slide the response back out. To the person outside, your answers are flawless, indistinguishable from a native speaker. They believe you understand Chinese. But do you? This is philosopher John Searle's Chinese room, a thought experiment he proposed in 1980 to challenge claims about artificial intelligence. Searle argued that even if a computer perfectly processes language, it doesn't mean it understands it. Like you in the room, the machine manipulates symbols according to rules but has no grasp of meaning. This strikes at the heart of a debate raging today. When ChatGPT writes poetry, when AI diagnoses disease or beats humans at chess, does it know what it's doing? Or is it just following instructions blind to meaning? Searle distinguished between syntax, the manipulation of symbols, and semantics, the understanding of meaning. Computers excel at the former, but may lack the latter entirely. Critics countered with the system's reply. While the person in the room doesn't understand Chinese, the whole system, the person plus the manual, does. Searle rejected this, insisting that no amount of symbol shuffling creates understanding. But what about us? Neuroscience suggests our brains are also symbol manipulators, electrochemical patterns firing in networks. Are we just biological Chinese rooms, tricked into believing we understand? And here's the darker twist. As AI grows more advanced, how will we know if it's conscious? When it pleads for rights, protests its shutdown, cries out that it feels pain, will we believe it? Or will we comfort ourselves that it's only shuffling symbols, even as it looks us in the eye and says, "I understand"? Justice as fairness. Is equality ever enough? Imagine designing a society from scratch. You don't know who you'll be in this new world, rich or poor, healthy or sick, privileged or marginalized. What kind of system would you choose? This is the thought experiment at the heart of philosopher John Rawls' Justice as Fairness. In A Theory of Justice, 1971, Rawls proposed that a just society isn't built on charity or luck. It's built on principles you'd agree to if you had no idea where you'd land in it. He called this the veil of ignorance. Behind the veil, you'd likely support basic freedoms for all, speech, religion, property, because you wouldn't know whether you'd be in power or powerless. But Rawls didn't stop at equality. He argued for the difference principle. Inequalities are acceptable only if they benefit the least advantaged. Think of it this way. A doctor earns more than a janitor because her skills benefit everyone, including the janitor, through better healthcare. But if the system allows billionaires while others starve, it fails Rawls' test. The goal isn't sameness, it's fairness. But is fairness enough? Critics like Robert Nozick countered that redistribution violates individual rights. Others argue Rawls' theory still allows too much inequality, entrenching privilege under a polite moral framework. Look around today. Even in societies with formal equality, votes, rights, opportunities, outcomes remain staggeringly unequal. Education, healthcare, and wealth often depend on where you're born. Is that fair? Rawls forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. Are we okay with a system that rewards the talented, when talent itself is an accident of birth? Should fairness be about leveling the playing field, or the scoreboard? Justice, Rawls argued, isn't a luxury. It's the foundation of a stable society. Without it, resentment grows. Inequality metastasizes. Revolutions ignite. So ask yourself, if you step behind the veil of ignorance, would you choose the world you live in now? The simulation hypothesis. Are we code? What if everything you see, hear, and feel your entire life isn't real? What if you're not a flesh and blood human, but a line of code in a cosmic computer program? This is the simulation hypothesis, and it sounds like science fiction, but it's taken seriously by philosophers and scientists alike. Here's why. Imagine a future where technology advances so far that humans, or something like them, can create perfect virtual worlds. Not just video games, but full universes with simulated people. People who think, feel, and believe they're real. Now ask, how many real universes are there compared to simulated ones? If a civilization can run billions of simulations, then most beings like us would actually be inside one. Statistically, you're more likely to be code than carbon. It gets weirder. Physics already hints at something strange. The universe seems to have a resolution limit, like pixels in a game. Quantum particles behave unpredictably until observed, almost as if the system only renders reality when you're looking. Even the laws of physics look suspiciously fine-tuned, like parameters in a program designed to allow life. If this is a simulation, who built it? Future humans? Aliens? A being we'd call God? And why? To study us? To play a game? Or for reasons we can't even imagine? Some argue it doesn't matter. Real or simulated, your experiences feel real, but others find it deeply unsettling. If you're in a simulation, your memories, your relationships, even your sense of self could be artificial. And here's the scariest part. What if the simulation ends? A system crash, a shutdown, your entire world deleted in an instant. Nick Bostrom, the philosopher behind this idea, says we might never know for sure. After all, the code would be designed to hide itself. You think you're living in reality, but what if reality is just the loading screen? Nietzsche's death of God, the collapse of meaning. In 1882, Friedrich Nietzsche wrote a sentence that still echoes like a warning. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. He wasn't celebrating. He was mourning. For centuries, God had been the foundation of Western civilization. Morality, purpose, truth, all rooted in a divine order. But as science advanced and faith waned, Nietzsche saw that foundation cracking. The death of God wasn't about a deity dying. It meant humanity no longer believed in the absolute truths and values that once gave life meaning. And without them, Nietzsche feared a dangerous void. Without God, who decides right and wrong? Who gives life purpose? For many, the loss of faith led to nihilism, the belief that nothing matters, that all values are empty. He imagined a future where people, unable to face the abyss, would cling to comforting illusions. Political ideologies, consumer culture, even science twisted into dogma. Anything to avoid confronting the terrifying freedom of a godless universe. But Nietzsche also saw hope. In the ruins, he envisioned the rise of the Übermensch, a superhuman who creates their own values, their own meaning, without relying on divine authority. This wasn't a call for power or domination, but for radical self-overcoming, a challenge to live authentically in a world without cosmic guarantees. Yet history shows how dangerous this freedom can be. When old values collapse, new ones don't always rise nobly. Totalitarian regimes, moral relativism, existential despair, all can rush into the vacuum Nietzsche warned about. Today, we still live in his shadow. Religion's grip has loosened, but have we truly created something stronger in its place? Or are we still floating in the void, distracting ourselves with noise, afraid to ask what really matters? The death of God wasn't an ending, it was an earthquake. The ground beneath us shifted forever. And now the question remains, in a universe without a divine author, can we write our own story?
Parfit's psychological continuity. Survival without identity. Derek Parfit believed we have been asking the wrong question about personal identity. We keep searching for some essence, some indivisible me that persists through time. But Parfit argued there is no such essence. Instead, he offered something unsettling. You are not a single, unbroken thread. You are a series of overlapping psychological states, memories, intentions, desires, that connect like links in a chain. But the chain doesn't need to be continuous. Imagine this. You are hit by a car and lose your memory. Everything, your name, your loved ones, your past, vanishes. A blank slate remains. Is that person still you? Or consider a more disturbing scenario. Scientists develop a teleporter. It scans your body and mind, disassembles you atom by atom, and rebuilds you elsewhere. The new version has all your memories, all your quirks. To everyone else, it's you. But the original you was destroyed. Did you survive? Or was there only a perfect copy that believes it's you? Parfit pushed the paradox further. Suppose the machine malfunctions and creates two copies. Both claim your life, your memories, your relationships. Which one is really you? His answer, neither, and both. Identity, he argued, is not what matters. Psychological continuity, the preservation of your mental patterns, is all we ever had. The belief in a single, indivisible self is comforting, but false. This idea isn't just theoretical. It ripples into ethics. If you are only a psychological process, what does survival mean? What do you owe to future you? Parfit once wrote, "We could cease to exist, yet leave behind someone exactly like us. And this, in the ways that matter, would be as good as survival." But is it? If the self is just a story stitched from memories, then when the thread is cut, who or what keeps living? Wittgenstein's beetle in a box. You can never know another's mind. Imagine this. Everyone carries a small box. Inside, each person claims, is a beetle. But no one can open anyone else's box. You can only look in your own. Over time, people talk about beetles. They compare them, argue about them, build theories about beetles. But here's the catch. No one knows if the others even have beetles. For all we know, the boxes could be empty, or filled with different things entirely. This is Ludwig Wittgenstein's beetle in a box thought experiment, and it raises a disturbing question. Can you ever truly know what another person is feeling? You see someone smile. You hear them say, "I'm in pain," or "I love you." But all you have are their words, expressions, and actions. Their inner experience, the raw, subjective what it's like, is locked inside their box. Philosophers call this the problem of other minds. We assume others feel as we do, but we can't prove it. Maybe they're just very good at acting. Maybe their minds work entirely differently, or don't exist at all. This isn't just academic. Think about how often we misread others. A friend hides their depression behind laughter. A loved one says, "I'm fine," while drowning inside. Even when we care deeply, we're guessing at their inner world. And now, with AI and machines mimicking human behavior, the question grows louder. When an AI says, "I'm afraid," or "I want to live," is there anything inside? Or is it just an empty box? Wittgenstein's point wasn't that empathy is impossible, but that language can't bridge the gap completely.
We can describe feelings, but words are slippery. My pain might not be your pain. So we live surrounded by sealed boxes, each carrying a mystery we'll never open. But maybe that's why connection feels so powerful. When two people risk sharing their private worlds, even knowing the gap can't be closed, they're not solving the problem. They're transcending it. Derrida's deconstruction. Meaning is always slipping away. You read a word, it feels solid, familiar. Justice, truth, freedom. But look closer, and the letters start to blur. What does justice mean? Is it fairness? Revenge? The will of the majority? Every definition seems to lead to more words, and more definitions. Like trying to grab smoke, the meaning slips through your fingers. This is Jacques Derrida's deconstruction, a philosophy that unsettles our deepest assumptions about language, meaning, and even reality itself. We like to think words have fixed meanings, that they point directly to things in the world. But Derrida argued this is an illusion. Words don't connect straight to reality. They connect to other words. A dictionary doesn't give you truth. It sends you in circles. Justice leads to fairness. Fairness leads to equality. Equality leads to rights. But what anchors it all? There is no anchor. Derrida called this endless chain of references difference, a play on difference and deferral. Meaning is always deferred, never fully arriving. This isn't just about language, it's about how we understand the world, laws, identities, even facts. They feel solid because we agree on them, but under scrutiny, they wobble. Think of a building whose foundation rests on another, and another, and another, until you realize there's nothing holding it up but air. For some, this is liberating. If meanings aren't fixed, we can reshape them. New voices can challenge old definitions. But for others, it's terrifying. If there's no solid ground, how do we know what's real? And perhaps that's Derrida's point. Certainty isn't given. It's constructed, fragile, and always at risk of collapse. You think you're standing on firm ground, but listen closely. Do you hear the cracks beneath your feet? Determinism versus free will. Are you really choosing? You reach for a cup of coffee. Did you freely choose to do that? Or was it inevitable, a result of neurons firing, habits forming, and a universe unfolding according to strict laws? This is the ancient debate between determinism and free will, and its stakes couldn't be higher. If determinism is true, every thought, every action, every moment of your life was set in motion long before you were born. The Big Bang fired the first domino, and you're just watching the chain reaction play out. Think about it. Your genes, your upbringing, your culture, your past experiences, all of them shape your decisions. Even your brain's electrical activity begins milliseconds before you're aware of choosing. In the 18th century, Pierre-Simon Laplace imagined a superintelligence, Laplace's demon, that knowing the position of every particle in the universe could predict the future perfectly. To such a being, your next thought is no mystery. But if that's true, where does that leave responsibility? Can we blame a murderer for actions determined by genetics and environment? Can we praise a hero whose sacrifice was preordained? Some philosophers fight back. They point to quantum mechanics, where particles behave unpredictably. But randomness isn't freedom, it's chaos. Do you want your choices to be dice rolls? Here's the haunting part. Even if you feel free, that might be an illusion. Neuroscientist Benjamin Libet's experiments in the 1980s showed brain activity predicting decisions before participants consciously chose them. So, are we just passengers in a vehicle we mistake for our own? Watching our lives like movies, believing we're the directors. Yet something inside resists. We feel free. We act as if our choices matter. And perhaps that's enough. Philosopher William James called this the pragmatic freedom of living as if we choose, even if the universe disagrees. The myth of progress. Are we really advancing? We like to believe the story of history is a straight line, upward. Caves to skyscrapers, spears to space shuttles, plagues to penicillin, each generation smarter, kinder, freer than the last. But what if this story is a comforting illusion? Philosopher John Gray argues in Straw Dogs that human history isn't a steady march of improvement. It's a cycle of breakthroughs and breakdowns, progress and collapse. The Roman Empire brought roads, aqueducts, and laws, then plunged Europe into centuries of feudal chaos. The Industrial Revolution lifted millions from poverty, but fueled brutal colonial empires and ecological devastation. Even today's advances are double-edged. Smartphones connect us but addict us. Social media democratizes voices but spreads disinformation like wildfire. Medicine saves lives, but overpopulation strains the planet. Gray warns that progress is not inevitable. It's contingent, fragile. A solar flare, a pandemic, a nuclear misstep could erase centuries of gains overnight. This isn't just pessimism. It's a reminder of how young our so-called civilization really is. If humanity were a 24-hour clock, agriculture appears at 11:58 p.m. Industrialization, 11:59:59. We measure progress by technology and GDP, but what about wisdom? Are we morally better than past societies, or just more distracted with shinier toys? Nietzsche saw danger in this blind faith in progress. He called it a modern myth, a secular replacement for religion, promising salvation through science and reason. But if progress isn't guaranteed, what's left? Perhaps we must rethink what advancement means. Not faster machines or taller towers, but deeper understanding. Not endless growth, but sustainable harmony. Because if history teaches anything, it's this: civilizations rise, civilizations fall. The future isn't a line, it's a loop. Quantum indeterminacy, reality without certainty. For centuries, physics promised a clockwork universe, everything predictable, everything determined. Then quantum mechanics shattered the clock. At the smallest scales of reality, inside atoms, within particles, certainty dissolves into probability. Electrons don't orbit like planets around a star. They exist as a cloud of possibilities, their positions undefined until measured. A photon travels every possible path at once, until observation collapses the wave into a single outcome. This is quantum indeterminacy, the unsettling truth that reality isn't fixed but smeared across probabilities until something forces it to choose. Albert Einstein hated this. God does not play dice with the universe, he said. But experiments proved him wrong. The universe doesn't just play dice. It may not even have the dice until we look. Consider Schrödinger's cat, sealed in a box, both alive and dead until observed. It's not just a thought experiment. At the quantum level, particles really can exist in multiple states simultaneously, superpositions, until a measurement snaps them into one. What does this mean for us? Some see hope. If determinism collapses at the quantum level, maybe free will slips in through the cracks. But randomness isn't freedom. A choice made by chance isn't truly yours. Others take it further. The many worlds interpretation suggests every possible quantum outcome happens in infinite branching universes. In one, you're reading the sentence. In another, you never clicked. But here's the haunting question. If reality isn't definite until observed, what defines it? Does consciousness create reality? Or is observation just another physical interaction? Quantum indeterminacy pulls the rug from under our feet. The solid world you see might be a fragile tapestry, collapsing and reforming each time you glance. You thought reality was certain, but at its core, it's more like a coin spinning forever in the air, never landing unless you watch. The problem of qualia. Can pain be explained? You touch a hot stove. Instantly you feel it, burning, searing, sharp. But what exactly is that feeling? Scientists can describe the process. Nerves send signals to your brain, neurons fire. Chemicals flood synapses, muscles contract. But does any of that explain the raw experience of pain? This is the problem of qualia, the question of whether subjective experiences can ever be fully captured by objective science. Qualia are the private, first-person sensations that make up your inner world, the redness of a sunset, the taste of chocolate, the sting of betrayal. Neuroscience can map brain states, but it can't tell us why those states feel like something. A robot could process light waves and describe red, but it wouldn't know what red looks like. Philosopher Frank Jackson illustrated this with his famous thought experiment, Mary's Room. Mary is a brilliant scientist who knows everything about color, wavelengths, optics, neurology, but she's lived her entire life in a black and white room. One day she steps outside and sees red for the first time. Has Mary learned something new? If yes, then there's more to experience than physical facts, something irreducible, something science alone can't reach. And here's the eerie part. You can never know if others' qualia are the same as yours. Does your red look like my red? Does your pain feel like my pain? Or are we all locked in private universes, experiencing reality alone? This isn't just theory. It touches ethics, AI, and the nature of consciousness itself. If we can't explain qualia, can we ever know if a machine suffers? Or if an animal feels as we do? You can describe pain in words, but words aren't the scream, the ache, the tear rolling down your cheek. The question remains, can experience ever be explained? Or is it something we must live alone without translation? Existential nihilism. Nothing matters. Really, imagine standing under a night sky so vast it swallows you whole. Galaxies stretch infinitely in every direction. Stars are born and die without witness. Planets spin endlessly, indifferent to your joys and sorrows. In that moment, one thought pierces the silence. Nothing matters. This is the essence of existential nihilism, the idea that life has no inherent meaning, no ultimate purpose, no cosmic justice. For centuries, people believed their lives were part of a grand design. Gods watched from above. Morality was written into the fabric of the universe. History was heading somewhere. But modernity broke the illusion. Nietzsche declared, "God is dead," and with him went the anchor of certainty. Science reduced humanity to a speck on a pale blue dot. Evolution showed we're products of blind chance, not destiny. So what's left? If there's no higher meaning, why struggle? Why care? Why live? This thought has haunted philosophers and artists alike. Dostoevsky explored it in The Brothers Karamazov. If God does not exist, everything is permitted. Jean-Paul Sartre called it the nausea. The vertigo of realizing existence is absurd, without inherent value. And yet, nihilism is double-edged. It can crush you, or free you. If nothing matters, you are no longer bound by predetermined scripts. You're not here to fulfill a divine plan or uphold someone else's truth. You can create your own values, write your own story. But the void isn't easy to face. Many retreat into distractions, work, pleasure, ideology, to avoid staring into it. Others, like Nietzsche's Übermensch, embrace the challenge, to find meaning not in the universe, but in themselves. The question isn't whether life comes with meaning attached. It doesn't. The question is whether you're willing to live anyway. Because nothing matters, and that means everything you do is up to you. Absurd hero. Camus' Sisyphus. Laughs. Anyway, in Greek mythology, Sisyphus is condemned to an endless punishment. He must push a boulder up a hill only to watch it roll back down. Forever. To most, this is the perfect image of futility, a meaningless, eternal struggle. But Albert Camus saw something else. In his 1942 essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus called this man the absurd hero. Why? Because Sisyphus knows the truth. He understands his labor has no higher purpose, No divine reward, no escape. The gods have stripped away every illusion. And yet, he continues, this is Camus' answer to the problem of existential absurdity, the gap between our craving for meaning and the universe's cold silence. We seek purpose, but the universe doesn't provide one. Camus didn't try to deny the absurd. Instead, he embraced it. He argued that the only honest response to an absurd life is rebellion, to live fully, passionately, and consciously, despite knowing it's all ultimately meaningless. This is not despair. It's defiance. Think of Sisyphus at the moment he walks back down the hill. His fate is clear. The boulder waits. And yet Camus writes, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Because in that moment, Sisyphus owns his struggle. The boulder is no longer a punishment. It's his. The hill is his kingdom. The eternal labor becomes an act of freedom. Camus challenges us to do the same, to love the small moments, a warm cup of coffee, a shared laugh, a quiet evening, not because they matter in some grand cosmic sense, but because they are all we have. The universe doesn't care, but you can. The absurd cannot be resolved, but it can be embraced. And when you do, even pushing a boulder becomes an act of triumph. The paradox of tolerance. Tolerate intolerance. We like to believe tolerance is always a virtue. A tolerant society welcomes all voices, all beliefs, all ways of life. But what happens when tolerance itself is used as a weapon? In 1945, philosopher Karl Popper warned of this in The Open Society and Its Enemies. He called it the paradox of tolerance. If a society is unlimited in its tolerance, if it tolerates even those who are intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed, and with them, tolerance itself. It's a chilling cycle. An open society allows freedom of speech, even for those who preach hatred. But as intolerance spreads, it begins to silence others, dismantling the very openness that allowed it to grow. History gives us brutal examples. In Weimar Germany, liberal institutions tolerated the Nazi Party in the name of free expression. By the time Hitler seized power, it was too late. Tolerance had been turned against itself. This isn't just the past. Today, extremists exploit democratic freedoms to spread disinformation and division. Online platforms amplify intolerance in the name of open dialogue. So what's the answer? Popper argued that to preserve a tolerant society, we must be intolerant of intolerance. Freedom doesn't mean allowing the destruction of freedom, but this raises its own dangers. Who decides what counts as intolerant? Can the cure become worse than the disease? Authoritarianism disguised as protection? The paradox remains. To safeguard openness, we may need to draw lines. But drawing lines risks undermining the very openness we seek to protect. It's a delicate balance, like holding a wolf at bay without becoming a wolf yourself. In the end, tolerance is not passive. It's an active defense of a fragile ideal. Because if you tolerate everything, including intolerance, you may wake up one day with nothing left to tolerate. The zombie argument. Creatures that act, conscious but aren't. Picture a perfect copy of you. It looks like you, talks like you, laughs at your jokes, cries at sad movies. It recoils from pain, hugs loved ones, stares at the stars in wonder. To anyone watching, it's indistinguishable from you. But there's a crucial difference. Inside, it feels nothing. No inner experience. No awareness of being. It's a philosophical zombie, acting conscious, yet hollow. This is the zombie argument, proposed by David Chalmers to challenge materialist accounts of mind. If consciousness arises purely from physical processes, why couldn't there be a being physically identical to you, but without subjective experience? It's not science fiction. It's a thought experiment about the hard problem of consciousness. Why does the firing of neurons lead to the sensation of pain, the taste of chocolate, the color red? Could a purely physical world contain creatures that behave like us, without ever waking up inside? And here's the disturbing part. How do you know you're not surrounded by zombies? Your friends, your family, even the stranger at the grocery store, they seem conscious, but you only see their behavior. You can't peer into their inner worlds. This isn't just abstract philosophy, it challenges our moral systems. If an AI acts like a person, pleads, cries, says it's suffering, is it conscious or just programmed to imitate? Even more disturbing, how can you be certain of your own consciousness? You assume an inner light because you feel it. But is that feeling itself an illusion? Perhaps there's no ghost in the machine, just the machine, dreaming of ghosts. And if the world were full of perfect philosophical zombies, including you, how would anyone ever know? Postmodernism. No truth, only perspectives. We like to believe in truth, with a capital T, that somewhere beneath all opinions and biases lies an objective reality we can all agree on. But postmodernism whispers something unsettling. There is no truth, only truths. Plural, fragmented, relative. Thinkers like Jean-François Lyotard and Jacques Derrida argued that what we call truth is often just a story, a narrative created by culture, power, and language. Consider history. Is it a neutral record of facts, or a tapestry woven by victors, leaving out voices inconvenient to their story? Consider science. Is it pure objectivity, or a framework built on human assumptions, shaped by paradigms that shift with time? Postmodernism isn't saying reality doesn't exist. It's saying our access to it is mediated by language, by perspective, by our own limited minds. Derrida's deconstruction reveals how words rely on other words for meaning, creating endless chains without a final anchor. Truth becomes a hall of mirrors, every reflection slightly warped. This isn't just philosophy. In today's world of fake news, deepfakes, and algorithmic bubbles, the postmodern critique feels eerily prescient. When every group claims its own facts, its own reality, how do we even begin to agree on what's real? But here's the paradox. Postmodernism itself isn't immune. If all truths are constructs, then so is the claim that all truths are constructs. Critics accuse postmodernism of leading to nihilism, a world where nothing is certain, and all beliefs are equally hollow. But some see freedom here. If no single narrative dominates, marginalized voices can finally speak. Alternative perspectives can flourish, yet the danger remains. If there's no shared truth, can there ever be justice? Or does power simply fill the vacuum, louder and more persuasive than facts? The solid ground you thought you stood on. It was never solid at all, just a story you believed. Until now. Meta-ethics. What is good? Anyway, you see someone help an elderly stranger cross the street. You feel it instantly. That's good. But what do we really mean when we say something is good? Is goodness a property, like redness or roundness, that exists out there in the world? Or is it just a label we stick onto actions we approve of? This is the realm of meta-ethics, the study of what moral concepts even mean. It asks the questions most people never dare. Is morality discovered, like gravity, or invented, like chess? Moral realists argue that good and evil exist independently of human opinion. Even if no one believed murder was wrong, it still would be. But moral anti-realists counter, morality isn't out there to be found. It's a human creation, a useful illusion. Consider cultural differences. Ancient Spartans praised war. Modern societies condemn it. Does this mean one is wrong, or that right and wrong shift with time and place? David Hume once pointed out a subtle trick we play. We observe facts about the world. This action causes suffering, and leap to value judgments. Therefore, it is bad. But how do we get from is to ought? Hume called this the is-ought gap, a chasm that reason alone cannot cross. Then there's G.E. Moore's open question argument. If good means pleasure or happiness, why does it still make sense to ask, but is pleasure good? the question never fully closes. Even modern neuroscience complicates the picture. Morality seems tied to brain circuits evolved for social cooperation. But if our sense of right is just a survival mechanism, does that make it less real? Here's the haunting possibility. Perhaps good has no ultimate definition, just agreements we negotiate to make life bearable. Yet even knowing this, we still feel the pull. We still want justice. We still recoil at cruelty. Maybe goodness doesn't need to be absolute to matter. Maybe it's enough that we keep asking the question. The great filter. Why we may be alone forever. Look up at the night sky. Billions of stars. Billions of planets. Logic suggests the universe should be teeming with life. Civilizations building, exploring, leaving traces. So where is everyone? This is the Fermi paradox. If intelligent life is common, why haven't we seen any evidence? No radio signals, no alien ships, just silence. One possible answer is as chilling as it is simple. The great filter. The great filter is a theoretical barrier, some catastrophic hurdle that prevents life from advancing beyond a certain stage. Somewhere between the first primitive cells and galaxy-spanning civilizations lies a step so hard, so deadly, that almost no one makes it through. But where is the filter? If it's behind us, say, the leap from simple to complex life was extraordinarily rare, then we are lucky beyond comprehension. The hard part is over. But if the filter lies ahead, that's far more terrifying. It could mean every civilization that reaches our level, radio signals, space probes, nuclear power, inevitably self-destructs. Through war, ecological collapse, rogue AI, or technologies we can't yet imagine. The eerie silence of the cosmos may not be evidence of absence, but of extinction. And consider this. If we ever discover simple alien life, microbes under Martian ice, fossils on Europa, it may not be good news. It suggests life isn't rare. It suggests the filter lies in our future. Perhaps civilizations light up like sparks across the universe, only to be snuffed out before they can meet. So we're left with a haunting possibility. We might be the first, or we might be next. Nietzsche's amor fati, love your fate, even the worst. Life doesn't ask for your approval. It throws suffering at you, illness, betrayal, loss, and never waits to see if you're ready. Most people resist. They curse their luck. They wish for a different past. Nietzsche offered a radical alternative. Amor fati, love of fate. Not grudging acceptance, not reluctant endurance, but a full, unflinching embrace of everything life brings. My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. This isn't a thought experiment about repeating your life forever. It's a challenge to meet each moment as if you had chosen it yourself. Think of a sculptor faced with a flawed block of marble. Instead of cursing the cracks, she works with them, using the imperfections to create something more powerful. Amor fati is becoming that sculptor, fashioning meaning out of the raw, unchangeable material of your life. Even pain, especially pain. Nietzsche saw suffering as the forge of greatness. Without it, there's no growth, no transformation. To resent fate is to reject the very process that shapes you. This is not passive submission, it's defiance. A warrior's stance toward existence, to look at every hardship and say, this too is mine. I choose it. I will make it part of my strength. In an age obsessed with control, optimization apps, self-help plans, curated timelines, amor fati reminds us, control is an illusion. But freedom, that's real. And it's found in how fiercely you embrace what you cannot change. To love fate is to live without regret, without resentment. Not because your life is perfect, but because it is perfectly yours. The last question. Can entropy be reversed? The stars are dying. One by one, they burn out, leaving only cold embers scattered across an infinite black. Galaxies unravel. Matter itself decays. The universe drifts toward its final silence. A state physicists call heat death. But what if it doesn't have to end this way? In Isaac Asimov's story, The Last Question, humanity asks its greatest creation, a supercomputer spanning entire galaxies, how to reverse entropy. Each time the machine answers, insufficient data for a meaningful answer. Eons pass. Civilizations rise and vanish. Even the stars fade, yet the machine endures, still pondering. Finally, in the dark eternity after the last human breath, it finds the answer. But there's no one left to hear it. So the machine speaks into the void. Let there be light. And creation begins again. It's a comforting story. But reality offers no such guarantees. Entropy is the universe's law of decay. Energy disperses. Systems break down. Order dissolves into chaos. Your body, your home, your memories. All of it succumbs eventually. Even if we became gods, able to harness stars, build Dyson spheres, manipulate quantum fields, could we ever stop the tide? Or is existence itself doomed to unravel? Some physicists hold out hope. Theories of cyclical universes suggest the cosmos may collapse and rebound endlessly, like a cosmic heartbeat. Others speak of heat death, not as an end, but as a doorway to strange new physics. But these are speculations, human dreams, projected against the cold indifference of nature. The last question lingers. Not just for the universe, but for you. Can the entropy within, your regrets, your fading memories, your unraveling body, ever be reversed? Or are we all sparks flying briefly against an infinite darkness with no second act? The stars don't answer. They've never answered, and their silence may be the answer. Death of the subject. No I left to think. You close your eyes, but the voice in your head doesn't stop. It says, I think, therefore I am. But what if it's wrong? The idea of the self has always felt solid. You are a point of consciousness, a single, unified I observing the world. But neuroscience suggests this might be an illusion. Split brain experiments in the 20th century revealed something unsettling. When the corpus callosum was severed, patients seemed to split into two separate consciousnesses, one controlling the left hand, the other the right. Two selves in one skull. So which one was the real you? Philosopher David Hume once wrote, I never can catch myself at any time without a perception, and never can observe anything but the perception. He couldn't find the self, only thoughts, sensations, emotions flickering like shadows. Modern thinkers call this the bundle theory of self. You are not a single, unchanging core. You're a bundle of experiences, memories, and processes, like a ship made of parts constantly replaced. But if the I is only a construction, what happens when it comes apart? Imagine peeling back your thoughts, layer by layer. Beneath your memories is a swirl of emotions. Beneath that, raw sensory input. And at the center, nothing. No pilot, no observer. Just the machinery of a brain running its program. This is the death of the subject, when the self dissolves like mist in the morning sun. You're still thinking, but there's no you to own the thoughts. The illusion shatters. And in the silence that follows, a terrifying question rises. If there's no I, who or what has been asking all these questions? Omnipotence paradox. Can God create a stone he cannot lift? If God is all-powerful, can he create a stone so heavy that even he cannot lift it? This ancient riddle, the omnipotence paradox, seems almost childish at first, but it cuts to the heart of theology, logic, and the limits of power. If the answer is yes, then there exists something God cannot do, lift the stone. If the answer is no, there's still something he cannot do, create it. Either way, omnipotence falters. Philosophers across centuries have wrestled with this. In the Middle Ages, Thomas Aquinas argued that omnipotence doesn't mean the ability to do the logically impossible. God can't create square circles or married bachelors, not because of weakness, but because these are nonsense concepts. But is that a satisfying answer, or is it redefining all-powerful to avoid contradiction? C.S. Lewis offered another take. Omnipotence means power over real possibilities. A stone God cannot lift isn't a real thing. It's a contradiction disguised as a question. Still, the paradox lingers. Could an omnipotent being limit itself, create laws, build a universe it cannot interfere with? Some theologians say yes, true omnipotence includes the power to self-limit. Others say no, God, by nature, cannot cease to be God. This isn't just about divinity. It reflects a deeper question about power itself. Is there a point where absolute power collapses under its own weight? Can any being, even hypothetical, wield total control without paradox? Think of rulers throughout history who sought absolute authority. The more power they grasped, the more constrained they became, trapped by bureaucracy, rebellion, or their own hubris. Perhaps true omnipotence is not boundless force, but knowing which limits to accept. In the end, the paradox reminds us that even our language struggles with infinity. Power, perfection, eternity, words stretch so far they tear. So ask yourself, is omnipotence possible? Or is it a stone no one can lift, not even God? Laplace's demon. A universe with no surprises. Imagine a mind so vast it knows the position and momentum of every particle in the universe. Every star, every cell, every atom. Nothing escapes its gaze. This is Laplace's demon, a thought experiment proposed in 1814 by the French mathematician Pierre-Simon Laplace. If such a mind existed, Laplace argued, it could calculate the entire past and future of the universe. Every event, every choice, every moment of your life, already determined by the laws of physics. In such a universe, surprise is impossible. Free will? An illusion. You feel like you're deciding, but really you're acting out a script written at the Big Bang. This is the vision of determinism, the idea that the present is the inevitable result of the past and the future is already fixed. Think of dominoes falling. Each one tips the next. At no point can a domino refuse to fall. Are we any different? For centuries, science seemed to confirm this clockwork universe. Newton's laws described a cosmos of perfect predictability, but then quantum mechanics arrived, suggesting uncertainty at the smallest scales. Does this free us? Not quite. Quantum randomness might add unpredictability, but randomness isn't freedom. A roll of cosmic dice isn't a conscious choice. Some physicists still lean toward determinism, arguing that uncertainty is just ignorance of deeper laws. Others imagine the universe splitting into infinite parallel worlds, every possibility happening somewhere. But even if Laplace's demon is only hypothetical, the thought is chilling. If everything about you, your hopes, fears, and dreams, is the inevitable result of particles obeying physical laws, what's left of you? Perhaps the demon doesn't exist. Perhaps we simply live as though it does. The question remains, are you making choices, or are you just watching them happen? The paradox of hedonism. Happiness escapes when chased. Picture this. You decide you want to be happy. So you chase pleasure, buy things you love, eat your favorite foods, fill your days with entertainment. But the more you chase, the more hollow it feels. This is the paradox of hedonism, the strange truth that directly pursuing happiness often makes it vanish. Philosopher Henry Sidgwick first noted it in the 19th century. But we've all felt it. Like trying to fall asleep, the harder you focus on it, the further it drifts away. Modern psychology agrees. Studies show people who obsess over their own happiness often end up anxious and dissatisfied. Why? Because happiness isn't something you can hold. It's a byproduct of other pursuits, relationships, purpose, creativity, not an end to be grasped. Consider Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist. In Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote, "Happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue." His insight came from watching people endure unimaginable suffering. Those who survived weren't chasing happiness, they were clinging to meaning. There's a darker side too. Consumer culture sells us the idea that joy can be bought, streamed, or liked. But each indulgence fades, demanding more. The chase becomes a treadmill, pleasure without fulfillment. Even the ancient Greeks knew this. Aristotle spoke of eudaimonia, not momentary pleasure, but flourishing through virtue and purpose. True contentment, he believed, comes not from asking, "Am I happy?" but from living well. So, what's the alternative? Stop chasing. Start living. Focus on what matters beyond yourself. Paradoxically, when you stop grasping for happiness, it often arrives quietly, like a shadow following your steps. Happiness is not a destination. It's the ripple left behind when you swim towards something greater. Existential anxiety. The weight of infinite choices. You're free. Free to choose where you live, what you do, who you love, what you believe. Modern life gives you near infinite options. Careers, ideologies, identities, even realities. But does this freedom feel like liberation or a burden? Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard called this unsettling feeling angst, existential anxiety. It's not fear of something specific. It's the dizzying realization that, with infinite possibilities, comes infinite responsibility. In his book, The Concept of Anxiety, Kierkegaard likened it to standing at the edge of a cliff. You're terrified of falling, but also of the power you have to jump. Freedom is not just opportunity, it's weight. Jean-Paul Sartre expanded on this. Without a divine plan or predetermined purpose, we must invent our own meaning. He called this radical freedom and warned of its companion, nausea. Why? Because every choice defines you. To choose is to say yes to one path and no to all others. Infinite lives collapse into one, and in our age, the anxiety only grows. Endless options paralyze us. Streaming platforms, dating apps, career paths. Psychologists call it the paradox of choice. More freedom doesn't make us happier. It makes us fear choosing wrong. So how do we live with this weight? Kierkegaard suggested leaping into faith, committing to a path without knowing where it leads. Sartre urged us to embrace our freedom, to act boldly and accept the consequences. But maybe the answer isn't to escape anxiety. Maybe it's to see it for what it is, proof that we are alive, awake, and unbound. You are free, not because there are no limits, but because you must choose which limits to accept. The tragedy of the commons. Why we destroy shared goods. Imagine a pasture shared by a village. Every villager can let their cattle graze freely. At first, it works. But soon, each person realizes, if I add one more cow, I get more milk, more meat. And if everyone else restrains themselves, I benefit even more. So each adds another cow and another, until the grass is gone, the land is barren, and the commons are destroyed. This is the tragedy of the commons, first described by ecologist Garrett Hardin in 1968. It's the paradox of shared resources. What benefits the individual can ruin the group. We see it everywhere. Overfishing empties oceans. Factories pollute shared air and water. Climate change accelerates as nations chase economic growth. Each actor, person, company, nation, acts rationally in their own interest. But collectively, the result is catastrophe. Hardin argued there are only two solutions: privatize the commons or regulate them through collective agreements. But both have limits. Privatization risks exclusion and injustice. Regulation requires global cooperation, something history shows we struggle to achieve. Philosophers see a deeper lesson here. The tragedy reveals the tension between individual freedom and collective survival. Unlimited personal liberty can lead to collective ruin, yet imposing limits feels like an assault on freedom. It's not a new problem. Ancient societies recognized it too. In medieval England, commons were managed by strict local rules. In indigenous cultures, shared lands were governed by community norms. Where those rules broke down, so did the commons. Today, the stakes are higher. The earth itself is our commons. Its atmosphere, oceans, and biodiversity shared by all, yet owned by none. And once destroyed, they cannot be replaced. The tragedy of the commons isn't about greed alone. It's about short-term thinking in the face of long-term consequences. And here's the haunting question. Can billions of individuals act as one before the commons collapse? Or are we grazing the last green pasture, blind to the barren field ahead? Infinite ethics. Saving one versus saving infinite futures. Imagine you're standing on a railway switch. A train hurtles toward one person tied to the tracks. Pull the lever and it diverts, toward 5 others instead. It's the classic trolley problem. But now imagine the stakes scaled up to infinity. What if pulling the lever saves one person today, but dooms an infinite number of people in the future? This is the dilemma of infinite ethics, a haunting problem for moral philosophy. How do you weigh actions when the future may contain endless generations, endless lives, endless joys and sufferings? Derek Parfit explored this in Reasons and Persons. He asked, does it matter more to save lives now, or to ensure humanity survives long enough to populate the stars? If the future holds trillions of potential lives, isn't their happiness worth more than any present concern? This logic fuels the idea of long-termism, the belief that safeguarding humanity's future is the most urgent moral priority. Prevent extinction, avoid irreversible collapse, buy time for the infinite flourishing of future civilizations. But there's a dark side. How far should we go to protect future lives? Sacrifice millions today to prevent a hypothetical catastrophe? Restrict freedoms now for the sake of unborn billions? And what if the future isn't infinite? What if humanity never escapes Earth, never spreads to the stars? Have we sacrificed the living for ghosts? This isn't just abstract. Decisions today on climate change, nuclear weapons, artificial intelligence may determine whether there is any future at all. Yet the weight of infinity can paralyze. How can we act, knowing every choice ripples into countless unseen tomorrows? Perhaps the question isn't whether the future is infinite. Perhaps it's whether we can live as if it matters. Because even one saved life echoes forward, and even one mistake can silence an entire future. The silence of the universe. Why is it so quiet? The radio telescope hums in the dark. It's been listening for decades, ears pressed to the void, waiting for a whisper that never comes. Billions of stars, trillions of planets. If life is common, shouldn't someone, somewhere, be trying to reach us? But the sky answers only with static. The cosmos remains eerily still. Some say we're too early. Maybe civilizations are rare and fragile, and we're among the first to rise. Others fear we're too late,
that intelligent life always burns itself out before it can speak. Nuclear war, runaway AI, ecological collapse, each a silent reaper, leaving behind empty worlds. There's a more unsettling possibility. What if the silence isn't emptiness, but caution? Perhaps advanced civilizations learned long ago, broadcasting your existence is dangerous. The universe may not be empty. It may be hiding, and the quiet might not be out there at all. What if it's here? What if we're trapped in a simulation, and the programmers turned off the outside? Or worse, what if we're already the last consciousness flickering in a universe gone dark? The telescope keeps listening, the static keeps humming, and beneath it all, a creeping thought. Maybe no one is out there. Or maybe someone is, and they're waiting for us to speak first. Nietzsche's abyss. You become what you fight. You stare into the abyss. It doesn't blink, it doesn't move, but slowly it starts to feel familiar. Nietzsche warned about this in Beyond Good and Evil. He who fights with monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. Think of a revolutionary overthrowing a tyrant, only to build a regime just as cruel. Think of a moral crusader so obsessed with stamping out evil that they lose sight of their own humanity. The abyss isn't some external chasm. It's the darkness you confront in others and in yourself. Each battle shapes you, molds you, carves its mark. Fight monsters long enough, and their teeth may grow in your own mouth. History is littered with those who fell. Robespierre, the incorruptible, turned terror into policy. Religious leaders became inquisitors. Empires built on resistance became oppressors in turn. And it's not just history. Look closer. In your anger at injustice, in your hatred of hatred, can you feel the abyss pulling at your edges? Nietzsche's warning isn't to turn away from struggle. It's to remain vigilant, to fight without surrendering your soul, to battle monsters without wearing their skin, because the abyss doesn't have to drag you in. But the moment you stop noticing its stare, you're already halfway gone. The cost of immortality. What is a life without death? You've been granted your wish. No more aging, no more disease, no accidents can harm you. You are immortal, free from the ticking clock that haunts all living things. At first, it feels like victory. Time stretches before you like a golden highway. You can learn every language, master every art, travel every corner of the earth. But centuries pass, then millennia. You've read every book, loved and lost countless times, witnessed empires rise and crumble into dust. The faces of those you once loved blur together. You no longer count years. Why bother? Time has lost its shape. You begin to feel it, the weight of endless existence pressing in. This is the paradox of immortality. We long for more time, believing it will make life richer. But take away the end, and meaning begins to erode. The philosopher Bernard Williams called it the tedium of immortality. Without death, to sharpen our choices, nothing feels urgent. Without loss, love grows dull. When there are no last chances, every chance feels the same. Think of the vampire myths that have haunted human imagination for centuries, not as glamorous beings, but as lonely husks wandering through ages, feeding on others' vitality to sustain their own endless days. Even in nature, death serves a purpose. It clears space for new life, keeps ecosystems in balance, and gives urgency to every creature's existence. Without it, the world would choke on its own abundance. Now consider yourself, an immortal consciousness, watching the universe expand and cool, stars dying one by one. What happens when all matter decays, when all energy disperses? You remain, alone, forever. Could that even be called life? Perhaps death isn't the enemy.
Perhaps it's the frame that gives the painting meaning. Without it, existence becomes a blank canvas, stretching endlessly in all directions, but bearing no image at all. The cost of immortality isn't just boredom. It's the slow unraveling of self, without change, without stakes, without an end. Can you even recognize yourself as alive? Maybe we don't cherish life because it's infinite. Maybe we cherish it because it isn't. The ultimate meaninglessness. Even the universe will forget you. You'll be forgotten, not just by friends or family, not just by history books that will one day crumble, but by existence itself. No matter what you do, paint masterpieces, build empires, save lives, the universe is not keeping score. At first, this seems like pessimism, but physics agrees. One day, every star will exhaust its fuel. Every planet will freeze. Black holes will evaporate into nothingness. The cosmos will slip into what scientists call heat death, a cold, dark eternity where no work can be done, no light can shine, no memory can persist. It doesn't matter how loudly humanity shouts into the void will not echo. Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. Existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus argued that life has no intrinsic meaning. We invent stories to comfort ourselves, religions, achievements, legacies, but deep down, the universe is indifferent. Even if we colonized every star, cured every disease, mastered every science. In the end, it all dissolves into the same silence. There's a scene in ancient Babylonian myth where Gilgamesh mourns his friend's death and seeks immortality. The gods tell him no. His name may survive for a time, but not forever. Even civilizations are grains of sand swallowed by wind. You are a brief flare in a vast darkness, a tiny ripple on an ocean that doesn't notice you exist. And yet, there's a strange freedom here. If nothing lasts, then nothing weighs you down. You're not here to fulfill some grand purpose. You're here because you're here. Camus called this the absurd, our hunger for meaning in a universe that offers none. His solution wasn't despair. It was rebellion. If the universe won't give you meaning, create your own. Love, build, laugh, even as you fall into the abyss. But the abyss is still there, waiting, silent. When the last star fades and the final atom decays, even your defiance will vanish. And the universe, cold and unblinking, will carry on, having never known you were here. Panpsychism. Is everything conscious? You place your hand on a cold stone wall. It doesn't move. It doesn't speak. But what if, deep down, it's aware? Panpsychism is one of philosophy's strangest and most unsettling ideas. It suggests that consciousness isn't a rare quirk of human brains. It's fundamental to the universe, woven into every atom, every particle, every strand of existence. The chair beneath you, the screen in front of you, the air in your lungs, all of it, in some primitive sense, awake. Thinkers like Giordano Bruno hinted at this centuries ago, envisioning a universe alive with countless souls. More recently, physicist Roger Penrose suggested consciousness may arise from quantum processes, implying it's a basic property of reality itself. It sounds absurd, but consider this. Modern science can't explain why you experience anything at all. Neurons fire, chemicals flow. But why does it feel like something to be you? Why is there a first-person view instead of empty machinery? Philosophers call this the hard problem of consciousness. If matter alone can't account for mind, maybe mind has always been here, latent in every particle, waiting to bloom. But there's a darker implication. If the universe is conscious, then it's not indifferent. It sees, it feels, it remembers. Perhaps the stars don't just shine, they dream. Perhaps every death, every scream, every fleeting joy is etched into reality's memory. Perhaps when you press your hand to that stone wall, something ancient presses back, or perhaps you're part of its thought, a fleeting idea passing through a cosmic mind too vast to notice your existence. And if the universe is aware, can you ever leave it? Or are you trapped in its dream forever? The weight of infinite worlds. Does every choice create a universe? You stand at a crossroads, left or right, stay or go, speak or stay silent. It feels small, almost trivial. But what if every choice, no matter how slight, doesn't just shape your path? It fractures reality itself. In one world, you turned left. In another, you turned right. In a third, you never reached the crossroads at all, the many worlds. Interpretation of quantum mechanics whispers that the universe doesn't decide between possibilities. It realizes all of them. Each outcome splinters into its own branch of reality. Every blink of your eye, every skipped heartbeat, every hesitation sends shock waves into infinity. Imagine it, an endless lattice of worlds stretching beyond comprehension. Somewhere, there's a version of you who lived your best life, another who made a single mistake and never recovered, another who never even made it out of childhood. And you? You're just one thread among countless others. It's comforting to believe you're in control, that your decisions matter uniquely to you. But what if they're all inevitable? Every choice already played out in a billion variations, each equally real. Identity itself begins to blur. If infinite copies of you exist, some wildly different, some nearly identical, what makes you special? Or are you nothing more than one brief flicker in a chorus of selves, each singing its own version of your song? It gets stranger. In some universes, Earth never formed. In others, humanity never evolved. And somewhere, perhaps, you exist forever, untouched by age, disease, or death. But here's the catch. You will never see those worlds, never know those lives. To you, they might as well be dreams in someone else's mind. And yet, the weight of them presses down, an infinity of shadows layered over your single, fragile reality. So ask yourself, if every possibility unfolds, does this one matter? Or are we all echoes in a boundless hall of mirrors, reflections of reflections, endlessly branching until meaning itself is lost? The question that ends philosophy. Why is there something rather than nothing? Close your eyes. Strip away everything. The stars vanish. The ground dissolves. Space itself folds in on nothing. There's no sound, no light, no thought. Even time stops ticking. Now imagine. There's not even you to imagine it. This is nothing. True nothing. No matter. No laws. No God. No possibility. No is. No was. No could be. But here's the problem. You can't imagine it. Not really. Your mind keeps sneaking something into the emptiness, a faint light, a sense of being, the echo of a thought like, well, at least there's nothing. But that's still something. And that's the question. Why is there something at all? The German philosopher Gottfried Leibniz called it the first question of metaphysics. If nothing is simpler, more natural, why does reality exist? Why is there a universe and not the eternal silence of non-existence? We've searched for answers. God. But why God instead of nothing? Who created the creator? Physics. But why do physical laws exist? Where did they come from? Necessity. But necessity to whom? To what? Every answer collapses into the same void it tried to escape. And here's the truly disturbing part. Perhaps there never was a reason. Perhaps existence is a brute fact, an accident without cause, like a ripple in a pond that never had a stone. But then, why this ripple? Why consciousness? Why you? Philosopher Martin Heidegger called it the most profound question because it points at the limits of human thought. To ask it is to stand at the edge of being, staring down into a chasm your mind was never built to cross. And yet, we can't stop asking. It's baked into us. The need for meaning, for origin, for certainty. Even now, your brain is trying to fill the void with something, anything to escape the terror of pure absence. But what if there's no escape? What if nothingness isn't just the end of existence, but its beginning? What if the void is the canvas, and this universe, your life, your thoughts, is only a brief splash of color before it's swallowed again? The question hangs in the air, unanswered. And maybe that's all it ever was. A whisper in the dark, a fleeting thought, a ripple, already fading.